Chapter 1345. Those beautiful eyes. The girl's panic didn't seem fake. Her hair was a mess, and her clothes weren't enough to cover her body. Large swaths of her snow-white skin were exposed, and her feet were bare. She pursed her lips tightly as she ran towards Yi Zichen and the others. Yang Jian stood at the front, his gaze cold. He pushed the girl away, preventing her from getting any closer. The panic-stricken girl became even more frantic at this moment. She couldn't help but beg and even knelt down. Demons. Yi Zichen knit his brows. He could clearly sense the demonic aura of the demon race emanating from the girl. He'd never had a good impression of the demons. "What beautiful eyes!" exclaimed Pu Jingwan. Pu Jingwan exclaimed in surprise. Yi Zichen looked into her eyes. They really were beautiful. Her eyes were as clear as the blue sky, as clear as the ocean. There was no trace of impurity in them. Just looking into her eyes was enough to cleanse one's soul. After begging a few times to no avail, the girl knelt on the ground, covered her face, and sobbed. As she sobbed, she looked so pitiful and helpless. Yi Zichen and the others might be her last hope. "How about we?" Pu Jingwan wanted to say something, but stopped. The girl's sobs broke her heart. Normally, she would have called the girl over to her side, protected her, warmed her, and shed her tears. But things were different now. She was on a bounty mission, and her employer had the final say. All she had to do was ensure her employer's safety. As for anything else that wasn't part of her mission, she didn't have to worry about it. As a result, she only got halfway through her sentence before swallowing the rest. It wasn't just Pu Jingwan's heart that broke. Even Yang Jian couldn't bear to see her like this, and he quietly retracted his hand. During this time, he glanced at Yi Zichen. Although he didn't say anything, his actions proved his true feelings. The girl who was rejected outside was still crying. Her hands kept wiping away her tears, and she hung her head dispiritedly. She didn't want to run anymore. The moment she'd chosen to flee into the primal chaos, she'd lost all hope of regaining her freedom. Run. Could she outrun rulers? Her escape only slightly delayed the time of her capture, but the result could not be changed. When she first encountered Yi Zichen's group, even though she sensed that they were probably gods, she still held onto a glimmer of hope. The result was barely satisfactory. No more running. He couldn't run anymore. He gave up. He would let her cry for a while to vent the unwillingness in her heart. Then, she would be captured by that person and go back to her dark life. Let her come over. Pu Jingwan's face lit up. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him on the cheek. Even though Yang Jian had already started moving when he heard this, she was still a bit faster than him. When he saw Pu Jingwan in front of him, Yang Jian retreated. Pu Jingwan, on the other hand, was far better off than him. "Don't cry, come with me." Pu Jingwan draped a cloak over the girl's shoulders. She smiled, bent over, and reached out her hand. The girl, who was on the verge of despair, stopped sobbing. Her eyes were red from crying, but they were still breathtakingly beautiful. She looked up in a daze. Pu Jingwan's hand was like a ray of light in her dark, lightless life. It shone on her face and reflected in her eyes. Pu Jingwan, who'd called her old lady, was incomparably gentle. When Pu Jingwan saw that the girl still hadn't moved, she smiled warmly. She carefully wiped away her tears, then reached out her hand again. "Come." The girl burst into tears once more. She bit her lip, nodded, and reached out her hand. Pu Jingwan grabbed Yi Zichen's hand and draped the cloak over Yi Zichen's body. Then, she lifted Yi Zichen into her arms and walked over to Yi Zichen. "This is our boss. He was the one who decided to save you. If you want to thank someone, you should thank him," said Pu Jingwan to the young girl. "Thank you." The girl bit her lip and nodded gratefully. Yi Zichen could tell from her eyes that she had a lot to say, but her lips moved and nothing came out. All she could do was bow and thank Pu Jingwan repeatedly. The closer he got, the more he realized just how beautiful her eyes were. Yi Zichen stood across from her. He stared into her eyes, and they seemed to sink in. After being stared at like that, the girl lowered her head in embarrassment. Only then did Yi Zichen come back to his senses. He'd lost his composure just now. However, in his heart, he couldn't stop muttering. How could her eyes be so beautiful? He'd only ever seen eyes like that on Lori. Back then, she'd never left the valley. She was as pure as a sheet of white paper. However, the young girl in front of him was somewhat different from her. From the young girl's eyes, he could feel that she had experienced too many changes in the world. She'd experienced despair, and she'd resented others. Even so, it wasn't easy for her eyes to remain so pure. The eyes were the windows to the soul. If her eyes were like that, then her heart had to be like that too. Yi Zichen refused to believe that someone with eyes like that could have been deliberately sent to his side. Someone with ulterior motives. That was why, even though she was a demon, Yi Zichen had asked Pu Jingwan to let her in. Did you see that? Our boss has taken a liking to you. Little girl, you're so lucky. If you really don't know how to repay him, how about you marry him instead? When Pu Jingwan saw the girl blush and lower her head, she slyly leaned in and whispered in her ear. When the girl heard that, her face reddened even further down to her ears. However, based on her expression, she didn't seem shy at all. Rather, she seemed nervous, and her fingers moved back and forth. I have someone I like already. That's not good news. Boss, look, this little girl already has someone she likes. You're like a fallen flower, but a heartless river. How about you see if I'm good enough? Pu Jingwan smiled flirtatiously. Pu Jingwan's face darkened as she glared at her. The girl instinctively shrank back, then leaned closer to Pu Jingwan. Don't be afraid, and don't listen to Pu Jingwan's nonsense. I've never wanted you to marry me. I brought you here because I felt sorry for you. I didn't have any other intentions. Yi Zichen glanced at the girl, then sighed deeply. What's your name? Chapter 1346. Yi Zichen. We'll take it after learning the girl's name. Yi Zichen chatted briefly with her and learned a bit about her past. And Lu, 17 years old. She was a member of the Demon Realm's Earth Demon clan. She possessed the celestial demon bloodline, which only appeared once every 10,000 years. In order to obtain the celestial demon's soul and bloodline, the Demon Emperor accused the Earth Demon clan of colluding with outsiders and usurping the Demon Realm's lifeline. She'd taken advantage of the Demon Emperor's absence to escape the Demon Realm. In her panic, she'd run into the primal chaos and run into Yi Zichen and the others. When the rulers of the First Era heard about Lu's past, they couldn't help but sigh, especially at such a young age. Pu Jingwan's eyes reddened, and she hugged Lu tightly. She'd even taken her as a little sister. Yi Zichen was the same. A teenage girl's family had been wiped out. Moreover, his bloodline and soul body had to be seized by others. This was indeed quite tragic. But the celestial demon bloodline was truly terrifying. She was only 17, but she was already a half-step diviner. In the entire God realm, only the bloodline of the divine mountains and holy lands could compare to her. And Lu couldn't help but cover her face and cry. Pu Jingwan hugged her tightly, trying to give her some warmth. In that case, it's the Demon Emperor and his people who want to capture Lu. Yang Jian furrowed his brows and snorted. Back in the day, you pretended to be a coward in front of me, but in the demon realm, you're vicious and merciless. How many of those who sit in that position are soft-hearted people? Yi Zichen's gaze was hostile as well. He turned to Yang Jian. If the Demon Emperor's people come, I'll leave them to you. No problem. Yang Jian nodded. If he dares say no to me, consider my loss. Woof woof. The howling celestial dog barked. Yi Zichen and the others calmed Lu down, then hurried toward the Third Era. In the process of advancing, Yang Jian, who was walking at the front, suddenly stopped. Everyone's gazes froze. If they weren't mistaken, the Demon Emperor's people had come to capture Lu. Not long after, a team of at least 10 people appeared in everyone's line of sight. The one walking at the front was an enchanting woman with a sharp horn on her head. Her skin was dark and her face was exquisite. Behind her were also oddly shaped men and women, but they were all purplish-black skinned. These people all had extraordinary auras, especially the woman at the front. It was a sovereign. When she saw these people, Lu was like a frightened rabbit. She burrowed into her arms, not daring to look in the direction of those people. It's them, isn't it? asked Pu Jingwan gently. Enlu nodded lightly, and there was a hint of fear in her eyes. It was a fear that was born from her very bones. From this, it could be seen what kind of treatment she had received in the demonic hall. Don't be afraid. With Big Sister here, no one can hurt you. Yi Zichen hugged her head, then gave Yang Jian a look. Howling, celestial dog. Woof, woof, his exclusive divine weapon, the Erlang lance, appeared in his hand. The blade dragged on the ground, and the celestial hound followed closely behind, quietly waiting for the group of devils to come. That damn girl. She's pretty good at running, snorted the horned woman sinisterly. Look, isn't that one over there? The horned woman looked in Yi Zichen's direction, and her gaze froze. They're coming. Yi Zichen's ruler spoke up, and the other rulers gradually followed suit. You damn girl, you're pretty good at running. The demons had already caught up, and they looked as if they wanted to rip Enlu to shreds. They completely ignored Yi Zichen's group and headed straight for Enlu. Boom! A blade of light descended, and the female demon at the front instinctively took a step back. Are you blind? Can't you see your grandfather is standing right there? Don't get in the way. The female demon didn't take Yang Jian seriously at all. This is someone our demon palace wants. If you don't want trouble, hurry up and hand that girl over to us. As they spoke, the other demons had already walked up, and in an instant, the 20 rulers on Yi Zichen's side moved at practically the same time. Their rulers' domains intertwined, forming a massive domain. The demons who'd come to capture Enlu froze. The female demon's pupils constricted. She didn't seem too frightened. Instead, she calmly sized up Yi Zichen's group. Earlier, she'd only focused on the fleeing Enlu. Furthermore, as a member of the demon palace, she hadn't paid any attention to Yi Zichen's group. She hadn't even paid attention to her surroundings. Now that she looked them over, rulers. They were all rulers. Judging from their auras, they were all from the God Realm. Just what faction of the God Realm was this? How could they dispatch so many rulers at once? Were they from one of the 9 divine mountains? Based on the current situation, the female demon side was at a complete disadvantage. She was the only ruler on her side. The others were all peak diviners. Friends of the God Realm, please forgive us if we offended you earlier, said the female demon with a calm smile. Don't try to get close. I don't know you. Yang Jian said, It doesn't matter if you don't recognize me. The female demon maintained her smile. You don't recognize me, but you must know of the Demon Emperor's palace. We are from the Devil Emperor Palace, and this young girl is someone our Devil Emperor wants. I wonder if our friends from the divine race can make things convenient for us, so that we can go back and report to our superiors. Demon Emperor Palace? Never heard of it. Yang Jian said. The female demon's face stiffened. Since the Demon Emperor Palace didn't know, it was obvious that they were deliberately looking for trouble. Demon Emperor Hall, God Emperor Manor, Fey Emperor Altar, Netherworld Emperor Palace. Anyone who lived in the 3 realms would know about these powers. Moreover, Yang Jian and his group were all ruler rank experts. Saying that they didn't know was clearly intentional. You don't want to make things convenient for me? The devil woman asked. Scram, you're the one who's making things easier for me. Yang Jian said. As he spoke, Yang Jian spun the lance in his hand a few times, and wisps of cold light shone on the faces of the demons. One more word, and you'll leave your dog head behind. Woof woof. Howling celestial dog barked. I wasn't talking about you. Go back up there, said Yang Jian. As the female demon's expression shifted, a blue command medallion appeared in Yi Zichen's hand. Scram. When she saw the medallion, her expression changed dramatically. She took a few steps back, then looked at Yi Zichen. Can you tell me your name? That way, we can report back to our superiors. Chapter 1347. The way home, the expressions of everyone from the devil race changed. This was directly challenging their devil hall, and was even challenging their devil emperor. Normally, they'd have long since attacked with their weapons. But in the face of so many rulers, all they could do was endure in silence. Their gazes landed on the female demon ruler. She was their leader, so it was up to her to decide what to do next. However, the way they saw it, she'd most likely choose to avoid the brunt of their attacks. As expected, The horned demon looked at Yi Zichen's group, as if trying to memorize their faces. After a long while, she nodded and retreated. The mountains don't move, but the waters do. We have plenty of time. Even now, the female demon's aura didn't diminish in the slightest. Let's go. She looked away, then led the demon's sovereigns away from the chaotic void. At first, they walked one step at a time, but once they were 100 meters away, they suddenly sped up and disappeared from Yi Zichen's line of sight. And here I thought you were really strong. As he watched the demons flee, Yang Jian curled his lips in disdain. He spun the Erlang lance in his hand in a circle and put it away. The howling celestial dog followed Yang Jian's sneer and barked a few times at the group of devils. Let's go. Once the demons were out of sight, Yi Zichen glanced at Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan. To him, this was nothing more than a minor interlude. He didn't take it to heart at all. Even if the demons went back and complained to the demon emperor, so what? When Yang Jian slaughtered their demon gods, the demon emperor hadn't dared say a single word. Now, with Pu Jingwan, Han Nan's trusted bodyguard, and the 20 rulers, what did he have to fear? Even if the demon emperor hated him for this, it didn't matter. He had returned to the third era this time for the sake of making the already chaotic three realms even more chaotic. Yang Jian and the others continued forward, but to their surprise, Enlu suddenly knelt to the ground. No matter how Pu Jingwan tried to comfort her, she knelt and refused to get up. Thank you. Truly thank you. After Yi Zichen and the others chased the demons away, Enlu's emotions underwent a drastic change. She didn't know how to repay these people for saving her life, so she could only express her gratitude in this way. Yi Zichen, who was walking in front of her, also stopped and grabbed her hand with a smile. I told you it's nothing. It's just a small effort. With your current situation, it should be very difficult for you to return to the demon realm. Why don't you follow us back to the Divine Mountain? Don't worry. With us here, even if you're a demon, the people of the Divine Mountain won't dare to do anything to you. Yi Zichen patted her on the head, then glanced at Pu Jingwan, then continued onward with Yang Jian and the other rulers. Pu Jingwan immediately understood. She hugged Enlu, smiled, and comforted her. At this time, Enlu had long since cried her eyes out. Ever since her clan had been wiped out, she had never felt such warmth. She bit her lips and wiped away her tears, then looked at Yi Zichen's back. I'll repay you. Her tender voice was filled with undisguised sincerity. When Yi Zichen heard this, he didn't stop. He simply smiled at her, then clasped his hands behind his back and flew towards the third era's god realm. That's the third era. Yang Jian, who was at the front of the group, stopped and pointed at a dazzling array of colors. Yi Zichen looked in the direction Yang Jian was pointing. In the distant void of primordial chaos floated an enormous compass, dazzling with light. Rather than calling it a compass, it was more accurate to call it a galaxy of stars. Countless celestial bodies revolved in an orderly fashion. The largest of these stars was most likely the god, Yao, and demon realms Yi Zichen was currently in. The compass was clearly divided into 3 parts, one for each of the upper 3 realms. Perhaps because it was recorded so far away, they couldn't really see the Divine Mountain. However, the river Styx, which flowed through all of the upper 3 realms, was like a dragon before their eyes. Beneath it were countless planets, corresponding to the myriad realms below the upper 3 realms. It was because of these realms that the gods, Yao, and demon realms flourished. This was the third era. It hadn't yet reached the end of the era. Everything was still thriving, full of life and vitality. Enlu, who'd been sobbing the entire time, stopped when she saw this. Her pure, beautiful eyes reflected the light of the third era, and they shone brilliantly. Was it like this before the first era? Enlu wasn't the only one awed by its brilliance. Pu Jingwan was as well. She stared at the third era's astrolabe in a daze, unable to take her eyes off it. She couldn't help but sigh. Probably. Yang Jian nodded. Is that so? Pu Jingwan was from the first era, but before the transcendence, she'd never taken even half a step out of it. By the time she was strong enough to leave, The first era had been ravaged beyond recognition by the primordial beasts. What she saw in the first era was a wretched, dilapidated world. Planets had been destroyed, abandoned, and scattered throughout the Milky Way. She'd fantasized about what the first era would have been like before the primordial beasts attacked. When she saw the third era, she finally had a better understanding. It was truly beautiful. Yizichin didn't say anything, and the others weren't in a hurry either. Their faces were filled with tranquility as they looked at the galaxy compass of the third era. They looked at its magnificence and brilliance, using their own eyes to portray all of this, deeply imprinting this most beautiful scene into their hearts. Meanwhile, Yizichin didn't move. It wasn't that he was captivated by its beauty as well. He had to admit that the astral compass was beautiful, so beautiful that it couldn't be compared. However, what he was more concerned about now was that he wanted to find the planet he was looking for in this star chart. Until his pupils constricted, he saw it. He'd spared no effort in searching, and in the midst of all the stars, he'd found a single azure planet. It was tiny, just a tiny one, but he'd found it. He stood quietly in the middle of the crowd and gazed at the tiny planet. It was still brimming with energy, and it continued its orbit. During this time, he felt an urge to skip the divine mountains and go straight back to that planet. That was his home. That was his roots. He wanted to go back, but after a few internal struggles, he gave up. The third era was coming to an end. He had to stay in the god, Yao, and demon realms and seize celestial fate. He had to fight them for it. But that didn't matter, although it wasn't time to go back yet. At least. Chapter 1348. Chapter 1348. Meeting the Demon Palace as the most powerful faction in the demon realm. The Demon Palace's location was just as important as its authority. It spanned millions of kilometers, floating in the air above the demon realm. Anyone who could live in the Demon Palace had to be of high status and power. It's worth mentioning that, unlike the God Emperor's estate, the Demon Palace was managed by Kuei Lin, first demon god Tagu, and second demon god Sumeru. Tagu occupied the north, Sumeru occupied the south, and Kuei Lin occupied the center. The three of them were in charge of their own factions and didn't interfere with each other's affairs. Today, however, first demon god Tagu and second demon god Sumeru, who never interacted with each other, met outside a small, unknown village in the demon realm. You know now, right? Aren't you the same? The two old fellows, both with one foot in the grave, didn't even look at each other. They stood about 100 meters apart, each beneath an ancient tree. Just like that, they began their conversation. It seems you've planted a spy in his place, too. Likewise, didn't you plant a spy in my place as well? Silence. Another long while passed. Let's hurry up and finish our conversation. If we can plant a spy in Kuei Lin's place, he'll naturally plant one as well. Naturally, he would have planted a spy among us. Perhaps he already knows about our meeting. Afraid of him? Can you stop acting all high and mighty, you old man? That's what annoys me the most. If you're annoyed, then scram. He could sense that the second demon god was a bit short-tempered. The conversation between the two of them stopped again. Fine, I can't be bothered to argue with you. We've been fighting for our entire lives, and this era is about to end. What's there to fight about? You know Kuei Lin's been up to something. Since we haven't seen each other in hundreds of thousands of years, why don't we work together? Sure. Then it's settled. Another long silence. After a long silence, neither of them spoke. After a while, they looked at the two ancient trees again, but the figures of the two of them were long gone. As for when and how they'd left, no one knew. Those two old geezers. Kuei Lin sat on his throne in the central Demon Emperor Palace. Someone had just reported to him that Tagu and Sumeru had left at the same time. With his intelligence, he could naturally sense something, but he only smiled faintly and did not pay much attention to it. What he didn't expect was that these two old fellows, who had kept each other in check for hundreds of thousands of years, would actually bury the hatchet for him. However, since he was able to surpass the latecomers and step on them to sit on the throne of the Demon Emperor, he was not afraid of what these two old fellows could do under his nose, not to mention that he still had important people to receive. He retracted his gaze and looked down the hall. On the left side of the purple carpet in the center of the hall was a symbol of nobility. Ghoulie sat on the chair with his eyes closed. At this moment, it was the time of the promise he made in 3 days. He appeared in the Devil Hall because he wanted to keep it. We've been sitting here for almost 6 hours. We still don't know when they'll be back. Why don't we discuss it? I want to see Enlu, said Ghoulie, cutting him off. Kuei Lin's eyes flashed with fury at this abrupt interruption. When he thought of Ghoulie's status, he forcibly suppressed his anger. A fake smile surfaced on his face. Then he sat down with Ghoulie and waited. After a while, an alluring woman appeared in front of the Demon Emperor's palace. The Demon Emperor recognized the man at a glance and asked directly, "Have you found Miss Enlu?" This woman was none other than the demon ruler Yizichin and the others had encountered earlier. Her eyes flashed with a dark light, and when she saw Ghoulie in the hall, she hesitated. "You're not an outsider. Just say it," said the Demon Emperor. "Someone kidnapped young Lady Enlu," said the horned female demon ruler. Ghoulie's expression darkened. He grabbed the armrest and snapped it in half. He shot to his feet and glared menacingly at Kuei Lin. "It seems you've hardened your heart." He'd come here to take Enlu back, but when he arrived, Kuei Lin told him she wasn't in the Demon Emperor's palace. He'd already sent people to look for her. But now this woman said Enlu had been kidnapped. Ghoulie could tell that she was a ruler. She was strong enough to rank in the top 10 of the Demon Realm's experts. Someone like her had gone out to look for Enlu, but now she said she'd been kidnapped? Was it the first and second demon gods doing? They had no reason to attack. What could capturing Enlu do them? Or was it the work of Yao or gods? Was that even possible? Since you don't want to let her go, there's nothing for us to talk about. Ghoulie looked away coldly, then tried to leave the palace. The Demon Emperor knit his brows and turned to the female ruler. "Who kidnapped her?" "Outsiders," said the female ruler. Ghoulie, who was just about to leave, slowed down. Then he heard the woman continue. "We saw Miss Enlu when we went to the Primal Chaos Void, but by then she was already under the control of a group of outsiders. Furthermore, he said he wanted Enlu. His name is Yizichin. If you want Enlu back, you should go find him yourself." Swoosh! A blur appeared in front of the female ruler. Ghoulie's arm fiercely grabbed her shoulder, the immense force causing her to feel pain. However, when he thought about how this person dared to speak to the Demon Emperor in such a manner and how the Demon Emperor seemed to regard him highly, he felt a chill run down his spine. The female ruler could only endure the pain. Ghoulie said, "Let's go." "Did you just say that Enlu was kidnapped?" Yizichin. Boom! Suddenly, Ghoulie's surroundings shone resplendently. They could vaguely make out tiny celestial bodies hovering beneath the radiance. He was only a diviner, but his aura was so strong that even the female hegemon wanted to kneel before him. Kuei Lin's pupils constricted. He looked at Ghoulie with greed and yearning. This is the Emperor Celestial Fate. Forget about the female chancellor. Even Kuei Lin couldn't help but want to submit to Ghoulie when he sensed his aura. This was the power of the Emperor's star. Yizichin, you again, Yizichin. Ghoulie pushed the female ruler away, his veins bulging. His eyes were sinister as he clenched his fists and gnashed his teeth. If it was anyone else, Ghoulie wouldn't believe it. If it was Yizichin, he'd believe it. His arms and shoulders trembled uncontrollably as he clenched his fists. Then he turned to look at the Demon Emperor. Only then did the Demon Emperor see that Ghoulie's eyes were filled with stars. Chapter 1349. Chapter 1349. The Shao Family. Wow. So this is the god realm of the ancient times. Pu Jingwan was as happy as a fairy. She tapped the air with the tips of her toes, a look of amazement on her face. She held Enlu's hand as they stared at the ancient yet lively city on the Divine Mountain. Since they'd entered the Third Era, they were currently on the Northern Divine Mountain. The other rulers all had different expressions. Some of them had lived through the First Era before the beasts attacked. They'd seen the Divine Mountains before. However, the beast attacks had destroyed the upper realms of gods, Yao, and demons first, so they'd never seen it again. Now that they'd arrived in the Third Era and seen the Divine Mountains, they couldn't help but recall many dusty memories. Some rulers, like Pu Jingwan, belonged to the new generation. Being able to see the ruins of the ancient capital that couldn't be seen in the first era, it was inevitable that many people would feel amazed. Is this really necessary? Even if you don't have the upper realms of gods, Yao, and demons, you've at least seen historical dramas, right? Is there need to be so surprised? Yi Zichen couldn't help but purse his lips when he saw Pu Jingwan's jaw drop. That's not the same. Pu Jingwan pursed her lips and nudged Yi Zichen with her shoulder. Everyone here is wearing historical clothing. I thought you were cosplaying. Io, go be sad. Now I'm going to switch targets. I don't like you anymore. I couldn't ask for more, said Yi Zichen calmly. You. Pu Jingwan pointed at Yi Zichen. After a while, she looked away and said to Enlu, let's go. We don't want to hang out with them anymore. As she spoke, Pu Jingwan held Enlu's hand and landed in a nearby city. Yi Zichen sighed helplessly. This was clearly the bodyguard Han Nin had hired for him. How could she abandon her employer and go off on her own? She wasn't doing her job well. If only the Bounty Association had an app. He had to give Pu Jingwan a bad review. Fortunately, the Divine Mountains didn't seem to be in the middle of a war. Yi Zichen relaxed. Pu Jingwan was like a tourist on a scenic tour. She weaved through the streets. Moreover, she was a stunning beauty to begin with. Coupled with her strange attire, she quickly became the focal point of the street. As for Yi Zichen and company, they followed behind her like nannies. If she liked anything, they had to buy it for her personally. This employer was a little aggrieved. Little Enlu, look, those people don't seem to be hostile towards you. As they shopped, Pu Jingwan comforted Enlu. Before she arrived, she'd been worried that the gods would hate her because she was a demon and caused trouble for Yi Zichen. But after walking for so long, even if the people on the street realized that she was a demon, they did not have much surprise or hostility. They treated her like an ordinary person. Such an experience allowed Enlu to let go of her worries, and a smile gradually appeared on her face. In fact, the Protoss are all-inclusive. Among ordinary people, they don't have such a deep sense of racial discrimination. Moreover, as they lived among the ranks of ordinary humans, they had no way of knowing the current state of affairs between the gods, Yao, and demons. As long as there is no war, they can live in harmony with any race. Yi Zichen chuckled. He wanted to completely dispel Enlu's worries. When Enlu heard this, she also smiled and nodded. Coupled with that pair of pure eyes, it was a mesmerizing sight to look at. I didn't expect you to be so good at comforting people. Pu Jingwan's divine sense transmission appeared in Yi Zichen's sea of consciousness. You're so gentle to Enlu. Tell me the truth. Do you really like her? Don't be fooled by the fact that she already has someone she likes. If you want, I can help you. Yi Zichen's warm smile froze. He glanced at Pu Jingwan, only to find she was looking back at him. She even winked at him, her expression rich with emotion. Soon after, she heard something in her sea of consciousness. You're crazy. At that moment, Yi Zichen's phone vibrated. He took it out. When Pu Jingwan saw it, she froze despite herself. You have it here too? Enlu, who was attracted by the sound, also looked over. However, her eyes were filled with curiosity. She had never seen such a thing in the devil race. Yi Zichen ignored Pu Jingwan's exclamation and opened his messaging app. As expected, most of the messages were from immortals in the group. They wanted to chat with him, but at the top of the list was a message from Wei Jia. Boss, a group of people from our gang came looking for you. I told them we didn't have anyone like that, but they said they knew you. I asked who they were, but they didn't say. I told them to contact you, but they said they didn't know how. They told me to contact you. Look, boss, are you there? How should we deal with this? Boss, it's an emergency. I've already sent people to investigate them. They seem to be from the Divine Mountains Shao family. I've already calmed them down. If you see them, write me a reply. Yi Zichen's pupils constricted as he read the messages. The Shao family had come looking for him. Could it be that they had already discovered it and wanted to strike first to gain the upper hand? Yi Zichen's expression was unsightly, but he didn't hesitate to reply. What's the situation? Boss, you finally replied. They're with us right now. What's the situation with the Battle of Geniuses? When can you come back? In the meantime, I can keep an eye on them. I'm on the northern Divine Mountain right now. Wait for me at Skyspan City's East Gate. I'll be there soon. All right. Yizichin put his phone away solemnly. When the others saw his gaze, they said nothing and waited for him to speak. The sightseeing is over. At the eastern gate of sky-piercing city, Wei Jie waited there after sending out the news. The Shao family had come looking for him, and he was a little flustered. Back in the lower lands, he'd heard Yi Zichen mention that he had a grudge against the Shao family. Wei Jie, a group of people descended from the sky. Yi Zichen walked to the front, with Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan by his side. Boss! Wei Jie hurried up to greet him, his expression grave. Yi Zichen got straight to the point. What's the situation over there? How do you know they're from the Shao family? Are you sure? I'm sure. They're from the Shao family. There's no mistaking it. When he saw Wei Jie's confident expression, Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. How many of them are there? Did they say why they're here? They didn't. They just said they wanted to see you. As for their numbers, about 200 or 300, said Wei Jie. That many? Yi Zichen's expression shifted. He glanced at Pu Jingwan, Yang Jian, and the 20 rulers. Chapter 1350. Intolerable. After returning from the outside, Yi Zichen led his 20-some subordinates through the east gate to Skyspan City. The ordinary cultivators in the city could sense their ferocious aura. Anyone who met them would subconsciously make way for them in the middle of the street, consciously retreating to the two sides of the street, watching the mighty group of dozens of people leave. Boss, this is the place. Wei Jie, who'd been leading the way this entire time, pointed at an average-sized residence. It wasn't very large, but in a place like this where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, Wei Jie had to expend a lot of effort and money. Of course, it couldn't compare to Upheaval's headquarters in the lower lands, but it was enough to support Upheaval's early development. When he heard that, Yi Zichen stopped and turned to Yang Jian. In a bit, watch my eyes. The others nodded. Yi Zichen took a deep breath, then entered the residence. Since Upheaval had only just begun establishing itself on the Divine Mountains, aside from the Ascenders, there were few newcomers. The only people that could be seen in the courtyard were the maids Wei Jie had found or the ordinary guards of the Earth Supreme Realm. When the maids and guards saw Wei Jie, they all bowed respectfully. Are the guests still in the hall? Wei Jie casually called out to one of the maids. She immediately stopped what she was doing and said softly, "Yes, they are." Yi Zichen waved her away, then exchanged a glance with Wei Jie. The Shao family was in the front hall. To tell the truth, Yi Zichen felt somewhat uneasy. No matter what, the Shao family was a colossal power on the Divine Mountains. Even if he'd always viewed them as nothing more than a stepping stone, that was only after Upheaval had taken shape. The Shao family's sudden appearance threw a wrench in Yi Zichen's plans. He had to bump into them. Wait for me outside and wait for my signal. Yi Zichen craned his neck and walked into the front hall. As soon as he entered, he saw that there were at least 200 people standing there. These people treated this place as their own home. Those who could sit on the chairs should be people with some power in the Shao family, and those standing on the sides should be ordinary members of the Shao family. Sitting on the chair in the middle of the room was a very old man. His face was covered with wrinkles, and he held a cup of hot tea in his hand. The moment Yi Zichen and company entered, they instantly attracted the attention of everyone in the room. The elder also conveniently placed the tea on the table and examined Yi Zichen seriously for a long time, as if he was thinking about something and reminiscing at the same time. After a long time, his expression inexplicably changed. "You are," the old man said. "That's interesting. You're the ones who came here to find me. I'm already here, but you don't recognize me?" Yi Zichen laughed. "You're Yi Zichen?" "Absolutely." Yi Zichen nodded. "I wonder who you are, and why you brought so many people here. This is our Shao family's Lightning Emperor, Shao Ting. Why aren't you bowing when you see the Celestial Emperor?" Two youths on both sides of the front hall suddenly spoke up. Yi Zichen's expression didn't change in the slightest. He looked at the old man sitting on the chair with a faint smile. His gaze was emotionless, but his heart was in turmoil. It was him. It was this old man in front of him who had prevented him from entering the god world. During his tribulation, he had unleashed 99 bolts of lightning, which had almost killed Kiki and reduced Su Iyun to ashes. They finally met. Yi Zichen's heart pounded violently, but when it came to his performance, "You're the one in charge of the lightning punishment. All these years, I've been thinking about you." "It's the same for me," said Xiaoting. "I didn't think you'd still make it up here, even after all that effort. Tell me, what are you here for? Could it be that the Emperor wants to make up for his mistake of letting me ascend the divine mountains, and wants to punish me here?" Yi Zichen smiled calmly. "That's what I was thinking," said Xiaoting. "But that's not why I'm here. Oh, I heard my good-for-nothing son ran over to you. Hand him over, and I'll just take him and leave." "Your Majesty, you must be joking," laughed Yi Zichen. "Why would your son run over to me? He's your son. You don't need to make excuses like this, do you? You don't want to hand him over?" "If I don't, how could I? You're making things difficult for me, aren't you?" Yi Zichen laughed amiably. Xiaoting's expression flickered, and he gradually released his lightning aura. His oppressive gaze pierced Yi Zichen's eyes, and a sinister smile flashed across his face. "It seems that allowing you to ascend to the divine mountains was a dereliction of duty on our part. Since you're unwilling to hand over my good-for-nothing son, I can't return empty-handed." "You, come with us," said Xiao Chun. Whoosh! The Xiao family's two sides instantly surrounded him, their eyes glinting menacingly. Yi Zichen's expression didn't change in the slightest. He stood calmly in the middle, taking in their ferocity. Then he turned to Xiaoting and smiled. "Your Majesty, what do you mean by this?" "Please come to my Lightning Emperor's estate and stay for a few days," said Xiaoting. "But I don't know you that well," laughed Yi Zichen. "It's fine. You'll slowly get to know me after a few days. My Lightning Emperor's estate is very hospitable. Besides, I've lived here for a long time already. Courtesy demands reciprocity, so I'd like to invite you to stay for a few days." "It seems I can't refuse," said Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen shrugged helplessly, but he was still all smiles. Seated in his chair, Xiaoting's eyes flashed with admiration, and he laughed. "No wonder the Xiao family was so badly battered as soon as you arrived in the God Realm. You've killed quite a few Xiao clansmen, haven't you? It's their own fault for wanting to ride all over me. How could I tolerate that?" "Of course not." Xiaoting laughed inexplicably, then glanced meaningfully at the others. "Now that I'm riding all over you, of course I can't tolerate it," laughed Yi Zichen. "Is that so? How about I show you?" said Yi Zichen. Xiaoting said nothing. Instead, he gestured casually. Yi Zichen didn't hesitate. He clapped his hands. "All of you come in." Instantly, Yang Jian and the other 20-plus rulers appeared. They'd been waiting outside for a long time. The sudden appearance of these dozens of sovereign realm auras caused the people in the front hall to reveal looks of terror. The people surrounding Yi Zichen instinctively retreated. Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan took advantage of the situation to stand by his side. At the same time, Yi Zichen shrugged and smiled calmly. Chapter 1351. Was it enough? Although the front hall was spacious enough, it was still a bit cramped with so many people. In terms of numbers, the Xiao family had an absolute advantage. In terms of head count, they could easily fight 10 against 1. But this wasn't a brawl. This was the Divine Mountain. There were clear divisions of cultivation, and each increase in cultivation level would create an insurmountable gap. Even the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family, how many rulers could they have? Besides, Xiaoting's visit wouldn't be able to bring the rulers of their clans with him. The relationship between the three realms was so tense. Wouldn't the God Emperor order them to stay behind and defend the central Divine Mountain? The answer was obvious. Although the Xiao family had brought many people, most of them were only Sky Supremes. There were only a few diviners, and the only rulers were Xiao Ting and the two people beside him. Compared to Yi Zichen, there were 20 rulers, and Yang Jian was even stronger than a demon god. As for Pu Jingwan, he hadn't seen her fight a true expert. She'd stood out amongst the countless rulers of the outside. So how could she be mediocre? Yi Zichen smiled faintly at Xiao Ting, who sat firmly in his chair. Even under these circumstances, he could sit so calmly. He was worthy of his title as the Lightning Emperor. However, his fellow clansmen weren't as calm. The people around Yi Zichen were all rulers. They stood at the very peak of the three realms. Just who was this youth? How could he have so many rulers by his side? However, Wei Jie was an Earth Supreme. Although he couldn't sense the ruler's true cultivation levels, he was observant. But he was observant. He could clearly sense the changes in the expressions of the Shao family when these people appeared. Emperor, do you think we have enough people? If you don't, Yi Zichen chuckled, then waved his hand and summoned a pitch-black, rust-covered pagoda. When they saw it, Shao Ting and the two rulers' gazes shifted. The next moment, the pagoda flashed with light, and countless diviner-level Yao servants appeared in the spacious courtyard outside the front hall. The Yao servants stood according to their cultivation levels. The lower one stood at the back, while the higher one stood at the front. The one closest to the front hall was an enchanting woman in red. When she saw Yi Zichen, she respectfully knelt on one knee. The Yao servants followed suit. Master. The monstrous sound waves were deafening. The Sky Supremes who'd come with Shao Ting turned pale with fright. How could they not sense that these Yao servants were all diviners? There was no need for the rulers by Yi Zichen's side to make a move. That should be enough to make them suffer. This should be enough, right? By now, even the two sovereigns sitting with Shao Ting couldn't remain calm. Just the people before him alone were enough to establish a peak force, one that was almost as famous as the sacred lands of the 8 divine mountains. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda really is in your hands. Looks like the rumors are true. Shao Ting smiled calmly, his eyes as calm as ever. The matter of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda and the Xianyuan sword had long been made public, so there was nothing to hide. Even if some forces were still hesitant, it didn't matter. He had the support of the outsiders and these hegemons by his side. Yi Zichen even dared to jump up and fight them. In the past, he didn't dare to expose himself, so he had to tread on thin ice. But now, what was there to be afraid of? That's right, I have it. What, Emperor Shao Ting, do you want to try and take it from me? Yi Zichen chuckled. Of course not. With so many rulers around, even I wouldn't dare act rashly, said Shao Ting. Then why don't you stay here as a guest? Are you trying to imprison me here? Asked Shao Ting. I wouldn't dare. Yi Zichen shook his head. You're the God Realm's Lightning Emperor. You're in charge of Tribulation Lightning. I'm nothing more than a nobody. How could I possibly dare imprison an existence like you? I'm a hospitable host, so I'd like you to stay here for a while. Is that all right? No. Shao Ting nodded. Is that so? As he spoke, Yi Zichen took a step back. Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan stepped forward as well. The two rulers by Shao Ting's side immediately rose to their feet, and the other Shao family clansmen's expressions froze. However, most of the Shao family clansmen's hands trembled, and even the two rulers' breathing grew unsteady. Are you afraid of dying? Yi Zichen looked at the people around him with a playful smile, then patted their shoulders from time to time. Look, your hands are shaking. You can't even hold your weapons properly. Who do you think you're going to fight like this? With a gentle push, the man fell to the ground. His face was deathly pale, and he tried to rise to his feet, but his legs were so weak he couldn't. How unsightly. You're a member of the Lightning Emperor's estate, and you used to be so awe-inspiring. Now your legs are weak. Your Excellency, your people aren't very good either. As soon as he said that, Yi Zichen's gaze darkened. Hold them all. Your Excellency has come to visit my humble abode. How can we let him leave so easily? Let him go. At that moment, someone whispered through the front hall's entrance. Yi Zichen and the others turned to see a maidservant enter, accompanied by the manor's guards. The maidservant wore a veil. Yi Zichen had a vague impression of her. She was the one Wei Jie had questioned just now. The maidservant slowly walked into the front hall. Yi Zichen and the other rulers were bewildered, but the pupils of the Shao family members constricted. The veil. It was the first miss. Yi Zichen glanced at the guard by her side. It was none other than Shao Yan, who held the Shao family's golden seal. You really refused to give up. Even though we're already here, you still came looking for us. But you've seen the situation for yourself. Do you think you still have a chance of capturing us? The veiled woman walked up to Yi Zichen and smiled at Xiao Ting. Xiao Yan walked over, his face ashen. When he looked at Xiao Ting, his gaze was complicated. Don't go too far. If we really fight to the death, it won't be good for either of us. I was worried about your reputation and didn't tell you everything, but don't go too far. Do you think anyone would believe me? Try me? Xiao Yan glared. For some reason, Xiao Ting felt a little afraid in the face of Xiao Yan's threat. This sudden turn of events left Yi Zichen and the others dumbfounded. What's going on with the maidservant and the guards? Before they could react, Xiao Ting slammed the back of his chair. Let's go. Did I say you could leave? Yi Zichen's gaze darkened. However, the veiled woman spoke up. Let him go. Who are you? Who exactly was in charge here? Before Yi Zichen could say anything, the veiled woman suddenly lifted her veil and lowered it again. Yi Zichen waved her away without hesitation. Chapter 1352. Xiao Yumei at Yi Zichen's signal. The Yao servants in the Yao ceiling pagoda made way for them. No one stopped the Xiao family. As he left, Xiao Ting's eyes were dark and gloomy. No matter how calm he appeared, he couldn't help it. No matter how calm he appeared, he couldn't deny that they'd suffered quite a bit during their mission to capture Xiao Yan, Xiao Hu, and the others. That wasn't because of how badly they'd been injured or the price they'd paid. Face. Most importantly, they'd lost face. They'd failed to capture them, yet they'd had to leave with their tails between their legs. The Lightning Emperor's estate, which had always stood at the peak of the Divine Mountains, had lost a great deal of face. You're letting them go just like that? Asked Yang Jian darkly as he watched Xiao Ting and the others leave. Yi Zichen nodded noncommittally. When they'd all disappeared from the courtyard, he took a deep breath, then turned to the veiled woman. You may. Everyone in the hall looked at the veiled woman. They knew that she'd spoken, which was why Yi Zichen had overturned his decision and let Xiao Ting go without hesitation. By the veiled woman's side, Xiao Yan's expression shifted as well. He looked Yi Zichen up and down. Yi Zichen called out to her, and the veiled woman took off her veil. Her familiar, pretty face lit up with a warm smile. Did you miss me? What do you think? Yi Zichen chuckled. Xiao Yumei smiled back warmly, then hugged him tightly. The instant she entered his arms, her smile transformed into boiling hot tears that dripped onto Yi Zichen's shoulders like scorching pearls. I miss you so much. Me too. When she saw Xiao Yumei, Pu Jingwan, who was holding in Lu's hand, subconsciously compared her to herself. She'd always been so proud of her looks, but in front of Xiao Yumei, she couldn't help but compare them. Of course, that didn't mean she was inferior to Xiao Yumei. She was merely on par with her. When Yang Jian saw her, he froze. Xiao Yumei. Of course he knew her. Furthermore, when Chang had disappeared from the Moon Palace all those years ago, he'd heard she'd disappeared with Xiao Yumei. He waited silently on the side, then walked up the moment Yi Zichen and Xiao Yumei separated. Is Chang also on the Divine Mountain? Xiao Yumei was stunned. In the past, Yang Jian had always been dressed like a normal immortal from the Heavenly Palace. Now that she saw him in Hawaiian attire, she couldn't immediately recognize him. I am Yang Jian. Yang Jian pointed at his nose. Only then did Xiao Yumei come back to her senses. Oh, Yu Chang isn't here. She went back to the sorcerer tribe. The Magi were a race that did not belong to any of the three realms. Like the Buddhist realm, they were a hidden race. Compared to the three realms of God, Yao, and Demon, they had far fewer clansmen. Any one of the 12 great shamans was at least an emperor-level expert in the outside world. Its status was extraordinary, and although it couldn't be compared to the outer realms, it wasn't much different. Yang Jian and Yi Zichen couldn't help but find it strange that Chang, he was related to the shamans. But soon, they thought of a possibility. Hui. When he considered this, Yang Jian looked at Yi Zichen, his gaze somewhat strange. Everyone knew that before Chang, Yi arrived at the Moon Palace, she was Ho Yi's darling. However, when they were fighting over the celestial medicine, Chang ate both celestial pills, causing Ho Yi to be unable to ascend to the Heavenly Palace. If Chang Yi had returned to the shamans because of Ho Yi, then Yi Zichen and Chang Yi's recent ambiguous relationship, that seemed a bit troublesome. Little did they know, Yi Zichen was also feeling a headache coming on. Earlier, when they tied the marriage strings, he'd been worried about Ho Yi. Could it be that what was supposed to come had finally come? Xiao Yumei looked at Yang Jian and Yi Zichen, who were staring at each other. They covered their mouths and chuckled. Given her intelligence, she could roughly guess what they were thinking. However, she didn't point it out. Instead, she smiled and walked up to Xiao Yan. Let me introduce you. This is my little brother, Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. Everyone was stunned, especially Yi Zichen. When Xiao Ting first arrived, he'd clearly said that his good-for-nothing son had come to visit him. At that time, he really didn't know about it, and felt that he was purposely looking for trouble. This Xiao Yan, it seemed he was Xiao Ting's son. That didn't matter. What mattered was how she addressed him. Younger brother. Didn't that mean she was also a member of the Lightning Emperor's Xiao family? Moreover, she was Xiao Ting's daughter? Don't overthink things. I've had nothing to do with Xiao Ting for a long time. Shouldn't you know who I am the best? Xiao Yumei smiled warmly and voiced Yi Zichen's confusion. Then she introduced him to Xiao Yan. This is your brother-in-law. Call a brother-in-law. In truth, Xiao Yan was more or less unwilling. Just who was this fellow standing in front of him? He would recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Back then, the Xiao family of the Lightning Emperor had overturned the rules of thunder and lightning multiple times for him. They had refused to allow him to ascend the Divine Mountain, but they had still allowed him to. Furthermore, he was the one who targeted the Xiao family multiple times. The ones who died at his hands were all Xiao Yan's trusted aides. What are you doing? Hurry up and call for help. Xiao Yumei said angrily. Although he didn't like the look of Yi Zichen, with Xiao Yumei present, he couldn't insist. Besides, when he faced Xiao Ting just now, he'd personally witnessed Yi Zichen's terrifying strength. The Yao Sealing Pagoda and the Xin Yuan sword. They could rival a Holy Land's ruler experts in numbers. Xiao Yan had no choice but to admit this sort of person was worthy of his sister. Brother-in-law. Yi Zichen reluctantly lowered his head. In truth, his face was covered in a bitter smile. The Xiao family clansmen he'd wanted so badly to deal with had actually become relatives. But that wasn't exactly, judging from Xiao Ting's attitude just now, there seemed to be some sort of grudge between him and Xiao Yumei and Xiao Yan. Yi Zichen nodded, then turned to Wei Jie. Arrange a room for Xiao Yan and the others. You should prepare more, said Xiao Yumei. What is it? We have about 300 people on our side. They're all staying at the inn right now. Yi Zichen's expression shifted, then he looked at Wei Jie. Do we have enough rooms? It's enough, but when our people come up later, Wei Jie wanted to say something, but hesitated. When the time comes, I'll think of something. You go make the arrangements. At the end of the day, the location of the house was too small. Wei Jie had found a house that could only be described as a residence for a wealthy merchant. If you really wanted to view it as the foundation of a faction, it was too small. Wei Jie nodded and went to make the arrangements, but Yi Zichen suddenly thought of something and called out to him. Chapter 1353. Yi Zichen knows the Yao servants returned to the Yao Sealing Pagoda. It wasn't that Yi Zichen didn't want to let them out, but the residence wasn't that big, and there were too many Yao servants. Letting them all out would make things a bit cramped. Wei Jie and the others got to work on Yi Zichen's orders. The rulers from the outside left to rest as well. At first, Yang Jian wanted to stay by Yi Zichen's side and protect him. But then he remembered that Yi Zichen and Xiao Yumei hadn't seen each other for a long time, and that they weren't going too far away. So long as he kept his divine awareness open, he'd be able to keep them safe. It's finally quieted down. Yi Zichen sat in a room he'd specially reserved for Yi Zichen and sighed. For nearly a month, he'd been constantly on the move. He'd learned far too many things he should have known, and many things he shouldn't have known. Endless pressure piled up on his heart. When he finally found some peace and quiet, he couldn't help but sigh. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Get some more rest. Xiao Yumei walked up to him and gently massaged his shoulders. She didn't need to ask. Just from the exhaustion on his face, she could tell how heavy his burden was. Yi Zichen, who sat on the chair, smiled, then patted her hand. I'm afraid it won't be easy. Once I made arrangements for Xiao Yan and the others, I'll have to rush over to the central divine mountain. The Battle of Geniuses? You know about it too? Yi Zichen nodded. It's the Battle of Geniuses, but that's only secondary. Right now, the central divine mountain is the center of everything. Then why are you still going? Even if it's a quagmire, I have to dive in. What else can I do? Yi Zichen smiled helplessly. He naturally didn't want to go, but the gods, Yao, and demons were currently active on the central divine mountain, and he needed God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate. If nothing unexpected happened, Guli should be on the move soon. If God Emperor Zhou Wu's celestial fate fell into his hands, whether it was for Yi Zichen or for the outside, it wouldn't be a good outcome. Besides, the outside had fulfilled all of his conditions. He couldn't disappoint them. Right, just now, Xiao Ting came to capture Xiao Yan. What's going on? Asked Yi Zichen. It's a long story, but to put it simply, the Xiao family split up. Xiao Yan and his trusted aides left the Xiao family, replied Xiao Yumei. Split. Yi Zichen raised his eyebrows. An internal schism within a family clan wasn't something that was too shocking. Even the God Emperor's estate had experienced internal schism before. However, it was rumored that the God Emperor had suppressed it with lightning speed, and that family clan that wanted to split had disappeared from the God race. Similar situations occurred in the other sacred grounds of the Divine Mountains. Compared to God Emperor Zhou Wu's methods, the sacred grounds' methods were much gentler, where they could move their emotions and reason with them so that they would give up on the idea of splitting. Although the two of them had never interacted with each other, they could not be considered enemies. Not to mention the God race, the demon race, and the demon race would also be divided. The divergence of opinions, the division of resources, and the difference in status would all become the hidden factors for the internal division of a family. But it was unusual for this to happen in the Xiao family. Everyone knew that the Xiao family of the Lightning Emperor's manor was far more united than the other factions. Once the Lightning Emperor gave his orders, all the clansmen had to do was carry them out. In terms of resources and status, the Xiao family had an absolutely perfect management system. Their clansmen couldn't find any reason to resent them. Ever since the beginning of the Third Era, the Lightning Emperor's estate had never experienced a schism. It was almost time for the end of the Third Era, and now. Can you tell me the reason? Asked Yi Zichen. Political differences led to internal schism. Xiao Yumei didn't hide anything from Yi Zichen. Xiao Ting betrayed us. What betrayed us? Yi Zichen's heart trembled. Xiao Ting collaborated with the demons in Yao. It's that simple, laughed Xiao Yumei. Simple? That was absolutely no simple matter. Yi Zichen continuously knocked on the table with his hand, while his mind spun furiously. At first, he'd wondered why he hadn't made it public, but after thinking about it for a while, he decided against it. You did the right thing. His words seemed incoherent, but Xiao Yumei nodded and smiled. In truth, Yi Zichen was referring to the fact that they hadn't revealed this information. The Xiao family had deep roots in the God realm, and Xiao Ting had fought his way through all sorts of obstacles for the sake of the God realm. Anyone could betray the God realm, but no one would believe him if he told them the truth. If Xiao Ting were to blame them, they'd blame Xiao Yin and the others. That would make it difficult for them to explain themselves. If they didn't reveal this information now, everyone would assume the family had split. Xiao Ting wouldn't reveal it of his own volition. As for why Yi Zichen thought Xiao Ting would betray them, it was because he trusted Xiao Yumei. But leaving them in the God realm is still troublesome, said Xiao Yumei with a frown. That was all she could think of. If Xiao Yin didn't reveal this information, they'd just assume the family had split because of political differences. But leaving Xiao Ting in the God realm was like hiding a ticking time bomb that could explode at any moment. It's troublesome, yes, but given the current situation, that's all we can do. If you don't say anything, they won't say anything. Since they're collaborating with the demons and Yao, they'll eventually give themselves away. All we have to do is wait for them to reveal themselves. That'll be enough. But that's too much of a gamble, said Xiao Yumei. In truth, this was a risky strategy. Everything depended on the other side making a mistake before they could counterattack. This was far less risky than taking the initiative to attack. If the other side really did reveal themselves, that would be fine. But if they kept everything under control, once they'd taken care of everything, they'd jump out and fight the gods. That way, the god realm would be at an absolute disadvantage. They couldn't just sit around comfortably in the god realm. They had to put pressure on them. Only when they felt pressure would they become impatient. Impatience meant they couldn't plan everything out, which would lead to careless mistakes. Yi Zichen rubbed his chin, mentally calculating how he could pressure them as directly as possible. Got it. Yi Zichen's worried face suddenly lit up with a smile. When Xiao Yumei saw this, she couldn't help but look puzzled. Yi Zichen took the opportunity to whisper in her ear. "What do you think? I think it's possible, but are you sure you can do it?" asked Xiao Yumei. "I'm not too sure, but I should be able to." Yi Zichen pressed his lips into a smile. At that moment, Wei Jian knocked on the door a few times. "Boss, I've arranged for Xiao Yin and the others' accommodations. I even got by Xiaoxing's name." Speak. Chapter 1354. Yang Jian and the great sage after Wei Jie revealed by Xiaoxing's true name, Yi Zichen was silent for a long time. It was obvious that his expression wasn't particularly good. His brows were deeply furrowed, but he vaguely sensed that this was only natural. The auxiliary star, Han Nan, who'd received Yi Zichen in the outside, was the first era's auxiliary star. The only reason he'd asked Wei Jie to ask for by Xiaoxing's name was because he was the third era's auxiliary star. Now it seemed, everything was pretty much as he'd expected. At the very least, there weren't many discrepancies. "All right, I got it. You can go now." Yi Zichen waved at Wei Jie. Wei Jie bowed deeply to the door, then took his leave. Yi Zichen took out a pack of cigarettes, put one in his mouth, and tossed the rest onto the table. A wisp of flame appeared at the tip of his finger and lit the cigarette. The room was filled with the strong smell of smoke. What a pleasant surprise. Back in the outside, Yi Zichen had sensed that something was off. He'd said he wanted to see the minister of the left precisely to confirm his suspicions. Han Nan's refusal had pushed his suspicions to the limit. If he really wanted to hide it, he should have done it more seriously. Couldn't he have just randomly chosen a fake name? Why did he have to use his real name? Now that Yi Zichen returned and asked by Xiaosheng, the result would be the same. Or perhaps the people of the first era wanted him to know all along. He couldn't figure it out. No matter what, Yi Zichen wasn't a parasite in the outsiders' stomachs. He had no way of knowing what they were plotting. However, he was certain that the auxiliary star was most likely the same person as the third era's auxiliary star. In other words, their master of the stars. He couldn't keep thinking about it. After all, their master of the stars was dead. Xiao Yumei tossed the cigarette but onto the ground and stamped it out. "You still have these?" Yi Zichen glanced at her and saw her fiddling with the pack of cigarettes. Yi Zichen smiled and nodded, but didn't explain. She didn't ask either. She simply tossed the pack onto the table. "Do you really have a way?" She was obviously asking Yi Zichen what he'd asked earlier. "I can give it a try. Besides, didn't you say it was empty? Since it's empty, we'll just buy it. You might not know this, but we have a backer." "The profound pavilion?" "I know. You even know this. What do you think I've been doing on the Divine Mountain? I've spent 80% of my day looking for news about you." Xiao Yumei wrinkled her nose angrily, and then she spoke again. "Who's that boy with you?" "I think she's a demon, but her eyes are very pure. I ran into her on the road. She's a rather pitiful child, so I brought her over." Yi Zichen still didn't explain too much about Enlu's identity. If Tian Tian was still here, she'd be about that tall too. Xiao Yumei nodded, and her gaze became a little distant. When Tian Tian was mentioned, Yi Zichen couldn't help but think of that cute little girl. When she saw him, she would run to his side, hug him, and call him daddy sweetly. But who would have thought? Who would have thought that this child was actually a god with godhood? Or goddess? I really didn't expect this, Yi Zichen sighed. Yeah, Xiao Yumei also revealed a bitter expression. Although she and Tian Tian weren't biological mother and daughter, they were definitely closer than biological parents. Once upon a time, they'd been each other's hope. In the end, they'd still separated. "You and Chang, he came here because of Tian Tian, right?" In response to Yi Zichen's question, Xiao Yumei was in low spirits. She simply nodded. He pulled her into his arms and gently patted her on the back. Xiao Yumei also silently leaned on his shoulder as she muttered while staring ahead. Do you think Tiantian's doing well? She should be doing well. No matter what, she's the war goddess. That title sounds pretty high and mighty. The two of them hugged and leaned against the window for a long time. In Xiao Yumei's heart, even now, she still saw Tian as her woman and cared about her every need. After a full hour, Wei Jie hurriedly rushed to the door. Boss, the great sage and Yang Jian started fighting. The great sage hefted his Rui Jingu Bang, his fiery eyes of truth flashing fiercely as he stared intently at Yang Jian. At first, the great sage hadn't been in his residence. The Xiao family particularly disliked Yao. Wei Jie was worried that the great sage's appearance would draw their attention, so he arranged for him and the Yao servants Yi Zichen had left behind to live outside. Just now, when Wei Jie went to fetch Xiao Yan's trusted aides, he told the great sage about Yi Zichen's return. When the great sage heard this, he rushed back to his residence, but he didn't see Yi Zichen. Instead, he saw Yang Jian flirting with the Xiao family's girls. Without even thinking about it, the great sage swung his staff at Yang Jian. Fortunately, Yang Jian's reaction was fast enough. He summoned his Erlang lance in an instant and blocked the rod. Otherwise, given the strength of the staff, even if he didn't die, he'd be half crippled. I told you, don't let me find you. The great sage wielded the Rui Jingu Bang in an awe-inspiring manner. He glared at Yang Jian as if he wanted to devour him whole. His pupils burned with faint flames. In contrast to the great sage's domineering demeanor, Yang Jian's behavior was far more shameless. Although he'd been ambushed, he was still all smiles. How long has it been since we last met? Don't you think brandishing your staff as soon as we meet? Isn't that a little damaging to our brotherhood? Who's your brother? Said the great sage. I've sent you so many messages, but you've been playing dead without replying. Really? Great sage, you sent me a message? Yang Jian feigned suspicion. If anyone else hadn't received a message, they'd definitely take out their phones to prove it. However, he didn't so much as move. Instead, his face was plastered with an infuriating smile. Maybe my phone ran out of battery halfway through. Can you not be so angry? The great sage glared at him. What? Do you want to fight me like we did back in the Heavenly Court? I admit back in Heavenly Court, I was just a little bit weaker than you, but now I can beat you 10 times over without breaking a sweat. Yang Jian smirked haughtily. Then let me, old son, experience it. The great sage swung the Rui Jingu Bang in a circle. A gust of wind blew the stone tiles off the ground. Yang Jian calmly pushed forward, and the tiles fell back to the ground. The great sage was just about to attack when a hand gently pressed down on his shoulder. Brother, let me go. I have to teach this arrogant brat a lesson. The great sage hefted his staff and tried to walk forward, but Yi Zichen grabbed him by the shoulder to prevent him from acting rashly. Chapter 1355. The great sage's weakness Yang Jian's expression was still as arrogant and despotic as ever. Back in the Heavenly Court, this monkey had bullied him so many times. Because he was poor, he couldn't bear to buy pills that could increase his cultivation. Even when he was injured, he used his spiritual energy to recover. He couldn't afford healing pills. Over time, he'd once been the Heavenly Court's #1 war god, but now his cultivation was far below that of the monkey. Back in the Heavenly Court, Yang Jian had suffered humiliation, but now he was the outside's special envoy, a ruler-level peerless expert. He could tell that the monkey was only at the diviner level. However, there seemed to be some sort of power inside him that hadn't been fully developed yet. If he could fully develop that power, his realm would definitely rise along with it. When that happened, even Yang Jian wasn't sure if he could still bully the monkey. He'd angered the great sage so much just now because he wanted to take advantage of the monkey's low cultivation to bully him. Unfortunately, Yi Zichen blocked his path. Son, can't beat him. The great sage pointed a thumb at his own chest, then looked at Yang Jian disdainfully. You think I can't beat 10 people like him? The two of them had fought for most of their lives. Yi Zichen had no idea how to console them. All he could do was smile bitterly and nod. At that moment, Yang Jian didn't want to bully the great sage any longer. If they were going to fight, it would only be interesting if their cultivation levels weren't too far apart. In Yang Jian's eyes, this sort of direct suppression wasn't particularly glorious. He decided not to bully the great sage, but he could still put on an act in front of him. Wild monkey, don't be unconvinced. Open your eyes wide and take a good look. See just how strong your grandpa Yang Jian is. Boom! He opened his third eye. The instant he did, his aura skyrocketed to its peak. Waves of divine power gushed out of him, making it impossible to face him directly. The great sage frowned. A ruler. After learning of Yang Jian's cultivation, the great sage's face alternated between green and white. He'd never have guessed that Yang Jian, whom he'd always bullied, would become a ruler after 100 years. If I hadn't slept at Master's place for 100 years, I'd definitely be a ruler as well. I'd definitely be stronger than this grandson. The great sage muttered to himself. The aura of a sovereign was overwhelming, and all the cultivators near the house subconsciously looked over. The ladies of the Xiao family, who had been teased by Yang Jian before, also had their beautiful eyes sparkling and their small mouths slightly open. This stinking hooligan is a ruler? The young ladies who were being teased whispered to themselves. This was definitely a world where the strong were respected. The young ladies who had thought that Yang Jian was frivolous had a completely different impression of him when they saw that he had reached the sovereign realm. Many young ladies were thinking about how to ease the awkwardness from before and get to know each other again. Xiao Yan, who was chatting with Xiao Hu, stopped as well. He sensed the oppressive aura Yang Jian emanated, and a dark look flashed through his eyes. Yang Jian wanted to put on an act in front of the monkey. As long as he could make the monkey realize the difference between them, it would be enough. There was no need for him to maintain his sovereign's aura for too long. Under Yang Jian's control, the surging aura returned to his body. At this moment, he snorted with his eyebrows furrowed. Are you afraid now? The way he placed his hands on his waist could be said to be quite infuriating. Although he didn't want to admit it, the great sage had to admit that he was no match for Yang Jian. However, his cultivation was lower than his opponent's, so he absolutely couldn't back down. In the face of Yang Jian's arrogance, the great sage simply curled his lips disdainfully. That's all you've got. I'm only letting you off for my bro's sake. Otherwise, even if you're a ruler, I'd still smash your head in. Yang Jian's smug expression instantly froze. Then, they watched as he furiously pointed at the great sage and cursed. Come. Try smashing me to death. Bro, don't stop him. Hurry up and let him do it. T-Sich. The great sage curled his lips disdainfully. His eyes seemed to say, I can't be bothered with you. Stop messing around, you two. These two brothers were clearly gay friends, and their relationship was better than anyone else's. Yet, as soon as they saw each other, they started fighting. It was hard to deal with them. He repeatedly tried to pacify them, but they still looked as if they didn't want to see each other. Until, fine. Hey, keep pretending then. I was just going to have a nice chat with my brother, the Supreme Treasure, about that Violet. I forgot what her name was. It doesn't matter. In any case, my brother probably doesn't want to know. Yang Jian grinned and looked away. Let's go. The great sage's disdainful expression instantly froze. Yi Zichen glanced over as well. He knew about the love and hate between the Supreme Treasure and Fairy Zixia. Yang Jian's words were aimed squarely at the great sage's weak spot. The great sage's gaze flickered back and forth. With a whoosh, he reappeared beside Yang Jian. What? Yang Jian looked up at the great sage through his nostrils. Ha. The great sage rubbed his hands together and laughed obsequiously. Bro, it's been so long. I missed you. The Ripple House is my treat. How about it? The Ripple House was one of Skyspan City's most famous restaurants. Their dishes were top-notch, but their prices were also ridiculously high. Even an ordinary celestial being would find it hard to afford a meal in the Ripple House. This was especially true of Yang Jian's appetite. Before he'd reached the heavenly court, he could eat 3 buckets of rice on his own. The great sage had invited Yang Jian to the Ripple House. It was obvious he'd gone all out. The Ripple House. Yang Jian arched his brows. He'd heard of the Ripple House's reputation and knew how extravagant it was. However, Yang Jian didn't care too much. He enjoyed teasing the monkey. "Wait, what did you just call me?" "Bro." "Then, Master Yang?" asked the great sage tentatively. Yang Jian nodded and smiled. "That's more like it." When he saw Yang Jian's smug expression, the great sage was beyond annoyed. He had no choice. He had to get news of Fairy Zixia as well. As soon as Yang Jian mentioned the supreme treasure, the great sage sensed he knew about Zixia. That's why he'd sent Yang Jian so many private messages, only to receive no reply. Little did he know, this only made the great sage more and more certain that Yang Jian knew. Just now, he'd been so angry at Yang Jian, most likely because Yang Jian had ignored him. That was why he'd acted this way. He'd promised Zixia that he'd come to the realm of gods, demons, and demons to find her. But now, he still hadn't received any news of her. He was in a rush. Thinking back, it might have been thousands, tens of thousands of years since they parted. He couldn't remember, but he didn't know that he missed her too much. He also knew that Zixia was definitely still waiting for him. He was very impatient. Forget about inviting Yang Jian to the Ripple House for a drink. Even if Yang Jian wanted to beat him up, the great sage wouldn't bat an eye. Chapter 1356. Go find Zixia. Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head and smile wryly. From the great sage's fawning expression, it was clear that Yang Jian had grasped the great sage's weak spot. Normally, he'd never seen the great sage like this. Yang Jian couldn't even close his mouth when he heard Lord Yang. Even worse, he patted the great sage's head. "Not bad, not bad. Monkey, you're quite good at pretending to be a grandson." Little did he know, the great sage was already at his limit. Then, Yang Jian patted his head and said something like that. The great sage instantly summoned the Rui Jingu Bang and knocked Yang Jian to the ground. Then, the Rui Jingu Bang was pressed against his crotch. If the great sage wished it, Yang Jian would probably have to say goodbye to him for the rest of his life. "Little monkey, is this how you should treat your Lord Yang?" Yang Jian didn't seem to understand the situation. He raised his nose in the air. "Hurry up and help me up, or else, HM." Before he finished, Yang Jian felt something wrong with his lower body. He straightened his neck and looked, then his eyes widened. "Bro, don't be rash." The Rui Jingu Bang was pressed against Yang Jian's lower body. Even if Yang Jian wanted to run, he couldn't. The great sage could definitely push the rod down the instant Yang Jian moved. When that happened, he'd lose everything. Yang Jian was well aware of this, so he didn't dare to argue with the great sage anymore. He grinned. "Bro, look at you. What are you doing? I was just joking with you earlier. Hurry up and let me up. It's cold down here. I'm going to catch a cold. As a bro, don't you feel bad for me?" The great sage still didn't say anything. He merely glanced at Yang Jian. Immediately, Yang Jian, who was lying on the ground, felt the pressure on his lower body increase dramatically. "All right, hurry up and let me up. I'll tell you." Between acting like an egg and the real egg, Yang Jian chose the latter. The great sage with the Jingu Bang was still a little suspicious. Yang Jian raised 3 fingers above his head and swore an oath. Only then did the great sage put away the Rui Jingu Bang and pull him up from the ground. "You damn monkey, you're really sneaky." Yang Jian cursed and rolled his eyes. "Hurry up and say it." The great sage couldn't waste another second. He wanted to get to Zixia Fairy's side as fast as he could and say something to her. "I'm coming." Yang Jian, who had threatened the great sage with the word egg, was a little indignant. He glared at the great sage unhappily. "Bro, are you coming?" Yang Jian asked Yi Zichen. Of course, he had to ask. On this trip to the Divine Mountains, his primary mission was to ensure Yi Zichen's safety. He needed to be by her side at all times to protect her so that she would not be threatened. He asked this in order to protect Yi Zichen while taking the monkey to Zixia. Should I go or not? Yi Zichen actually wanted to go. He mainly wanted to go and see if Zixia Fairy was really as gentle and infatuated as portrayed in the movies. He also wanted to support his brother, the great sage. According to Yang Jian, when Zixia Fairy left, It was her family who brought her back. She didn't like the great sage very much. As a brother, he should go and support him. However, he had other things to take care of. He had to go to the Central Divine Mountain for the Battle of Geniuses, and he had to deal with the pressure on the Xiao family. I can't go right now. I have to go to the Central Divine Mountain and take care of some business. Furthermore, the great sage seems to be in a hurry. How about this? You go with him and send me your address. Once I'm done with my business, I'll go find you. Will that work? Yang Jian knit his brows. You're not as safe as you think. If I'm not there, what will you do? If someone finds you while I'm gone and steals your... Give me the address. I'll go by myself, said the great sage. Have Yang Jian go with you, said Yi Zichen. Have you forgotten how Zixia Fairy left all those years ago? The way I see it, her family isn't small. If you were a ruler, that would be one thing, but you're just a diviner. Have Yang Jian go with you. For better or for worse, he's a ruler and a special envoy from the outside. He'll be able to back you up. With that, Yi Zichen turned to Yang Jian and said, Don't worry, just go with the great sage. Even if you're not there, there's still those 20 rulers, and Pu Jingwan is there too. There's nothing to worry about. Yang Jian wanted to say more, but Yi Zichen slapped him in the face. Then it's settled. Go with the great sage and give me the address. When I'm done, I'll go find you. Although Yang Jian was teasing the great sage, deep down, he wanted to take the great sage with him. Zixia had been a thorn in the monkey's heart for tens of thousands of years. As his brother, he had to help him no matter what. Otherwise, why would he go looking for Zixia for no reason? It was all because of the monkey. Now that Yi Zichen said this, after some hesitation, Yang Jian agreed. Yang Jian took his phone out of his pocket, sent Yi Zichen a picture, and drew a purple circle on it. When he saw the map, Yi Zichen was stunned. The Yao realm. So Fairy Zixia was a Yao. Yi Zichen silently put his phone back in his pocket, then nodded. I got the address. You can head out now. Then the rippling house. When you come back, son, will treat you. The great sage rolled his eyes. Right now, all he wanted to do was go see Fairy Zixia. Nothing else mattered. You said it. Yang Jian slapped his thigh, then pointed at the crowd. Everyone heard that. The monkey said he's going to invite me to the rippling house. Hurry up and go. The great sage urged him on, so Yang Jian didn't dawdle. He grabbed the great sage by the shoulder, transformed into a beam of light, and disappeared from sight. Xiao Yumei, who'd come with Yi Zichen, couldn't help but say, Fairy Zixia really does exist? I thought she was just a myth. This is really strange. Why do all the people we see on TV really exist? I know, said Yi Zichen. He seemed to be answering, but he also seemed to be sighing. Xiao Yumei recalled what Yi Zichen had just said to the great sage and Yang Jian. Are you going to leave too? Yi Zichen nodded, then said, I have to. Neither Xiao Ting nor the Battle of Geniuses gave me time to waste. It just so happens that Yang Jian and the others have left, so I'll leave as well. Xiao Yumei's expression darkened. The two of them hadn't even been together for 6 hours. However, ever since the modern realm began, she'd always been the considerate type. After 100 years of tempering, she knew better than anyone else what to do. Chapter 1357. Heavenly God City under guard Heavenly God City. As the capital of the God realm, Heavenly God City had always been bustling with activity. It was one of the most populated cities in the world. However, ever since the Battle of Geniuses began, the city had become somewhat deserted. Even though the streets were still packed with people, and many foreign experts had come to visit, the entire city wasn't as bustling as before. However, the entire capital city was not as bustling as before. In comparison, there was a somewhat dull aura that enveloped the entire city. It seems the situation isn't as optimistic as I thought. Yi Zichen had just arrived through Skyspan City's spatial transfer formation. Although Heavenly God City hadn't suffered as much of a disaster as he'd imagined, he wasn't particularly optimistic either. Everywhere he looked, he could see soldiers clad in battle armor. They carried their weapons and vigilantly patrolled the city. From the streets to the skies, there were guards everywhere. That wasn't all. As soon as he emerged from the transfer formation, he sensed several auras at least at the diviner level. It was as if they were trying to spy on him, but as soon as they got close, Pu Jingwan blocked them. The people here really aren't polite. Pu Jingwan furrowed her brows in annoyance. Spying on others with their auras was like stripping them naked for everyone to see. It wasn't as simple as prying on someone's privacy. Pu Jingwan frowned and crossed her arms. Before she'd even finished speaking, she saw a squad of guards approach. Judging from their aggressive demeanor, they were most likely here for the two of them. Wait a moment. The person who spoke to Yi Zichen and company was a man who was armed to the teeth. From his eyes, Yi Zichen could tell that he was definitely not young. Of course, no cultivator on the Divine Mountains was too young. Most importantly, this man wasn't one of the younger generation. Judging from his tone, he was fairly polite. He reached out and stopped Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan, who were just about to leave. Please show me your identification. The guard already extended his hand. Yi Zichen casually took out his crystal card. And this one, the guard captain pointed at Pu Jingwan. This put Yi Zichen in a difficult position. Only people from the Divine Mountains possessed identification cards. Pu Jingwan was an outsider, so how could she possibly have one? We came from Skyspan City. She left her crystal card at home, explained Yi Zichen. Then I'm sorry, your friend will have to follow us. Following the captain's words, his team members had already surrounded him. You can't possibly not tell that we're both gods, can you? Yi Zichen knit his brows. If you don't have a crystal card, you won't be able to identify us. Little brother, it's best if you don't care. We are just following orders. If your friend really left her crystal card in Heaven Connect City, we naturally have a way to prove her innocence. If she's not, we also have your identity information here. When the time comes, you might need to stay with us for a while, the guard captain said. So harsh. A solemn expression flashed across Yi Zichen's face. It was obvious that the relationship between the god race, the Yao race, and the demon race had undergone some subtle changes. Otherwise, the divine race would not be so paranoid, especially since Pu Jingwan's aura clearly belonged to the god race. You suspect my friend of being a demon? Asked Yi Zichen. I wouldn't call it a suspicion, but I can't deny it either. Your friend doesn't have an identity crystal card that belongs to the god race. You should be clear about this. If you want to prove your friend's identity, you'd best come with us, said the guard captain kindly. Then why are the Yao and demons allowed to roam the city as they please? My friend simply doesn't have a crystal card, yet you're targeting her like this. If she doesn't have a crystal card, just treat her as a Yao or demon, said Yi Zichen. Are you sure? The guard captain's tone suddenly slowed. As soon as he spoke, both Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan sensed his aura change dramatically. If he had explained it in a friendly manner before, then his words were a little sharper after he finished speaking. If you're trying to say your friend is a Yao or demon, can you explain to us why she's pretending to be a god, and why? You're covering for her, saying she left her crystal card in Skyspan City. What are you trying to do? Suddenly, Yi Zichen recalled the demons they'd encountered who could hide their auras. Back then, they'd sent their corpses to Skyspan Academy. Could it be that the gods had made some progress? Was that why they were so cautious? She didn't have a crystal card, yet she was pretending to be a god? Yi Zichen couldn't help but curse himself for saying the wrong thing. He'd almost forgotten that demons could disguise their auras. After what he'd just said, there was no way he could clear his name. If he tried to explain, he might just make things worse. Originally, he just wanted to cooperate with the guards and not mention his identity. But now it seemed he had no choice. Don't overthink things. My friend is absolutely not a Yao or demon. I was just saying it casually, said Yi Zichen. The captain of the guards looked at him calmly. Yi Zichen took a deep breath. There's no way I'm like what you're thinking. I'm not thinking anything. You're the one imagining things. What I'm doing right now is just our job. If you have a crystal card, you can pass. Demons and Yao have their own places to separate you. If you don't have a crystal card, you'll have to come with us, said the captain meticulously. All right, I was overthinking things. Yi Zichen smiled apologetically, then shrugged. But to tell the truth, there's really no need. Don't you? Don't you know who I am? I'm sorry, but no matter who you are, your friend doesn't have a crystal card. She'll have to come with us and undergo an inspection. With that, the captain didn't waste any more words with Yi Zichen. He glanced at his subordinates, and they all attacked Pu Jingwan. Sky Supremes. The guards were all peak Sky Supremes at the very least. With a diviner as their captain, they could be considered a fairly strong squad. But their opponent was Pu Jingwan, someone who ordinary rulers couldn't last more than 10 rounds against. Chapter 1358. A single punch she attacked. The Sky Supreme guards fell to the ground and coughed up mouthfuls of blood. In truth, Pu Jingwan had held back. She could feel the hostility of these people towards her, but in her eyes, it would be difficult for these people to harm her life. She simply didn't want these people to touch her, so she used a wave of chi to repel them. If she'd really gotten angry, never mind the Sky Supremes. Even the leader of the celestial beings would have probably died by now. From start to finish, Pu Jingwan hadn't said a single word. The diviner-level captain, who'd been forced back several steps by the blast of air, had a solemn expression on his face. He sensed an indescribable pressure emanating from Pu Jingwan. I knew you were up to no good. At that moment, a wild, arrogant laugh came from the skies above the city. Looking up, one could see that the sky above Heavenly God City was filled with a layer of pitch-black clouds. An old man stood in the middle of the clouds, his hair dancing in the wind. Your Excellency, the diviner-level captain bowed deeply. He was the one who'd instigated the guards to attack Yi Zichen and the others. After the old man appeared, Pu Jingwan sensed his aura. When they'd first arrived, she'd sensed that he was one of the few who'd tried to spy on them. Only now did Pu Jingwan's expression reveal a hint of displeasure. When she faced these diviners and Sky Supreme guards, they weren't even on the same level. She didn't care about them at all, or rather, didn't care about them at all. Pu Jingwan was indifferent to their actions. Even when she'd attacked them, she'd seemed disdainful. The old man in the sky was different. Based on his aura, she could tell he was a ruler. Furthermore, Pu Jingwan didn't like it when others used their auras to spy on her. That was you just now, wasn't it? This wasn't just displeasure. Pu Jingwan's tone carried a hint of threat and interrogation. She slowly clenched her fists, and the crackling sounds of her bones could be heard from her clenched fists. Yi Zichen slowly retreated to the side. He didn't stop Zhou Wu. There was no way he'd ever get along with Zhou Wu. The ruler in front of him was most likely one of Zhou Wu's people. Since Pu Jingwan wanted to deal with him, he would let her do it. Now, Yi Zichen felt a bit of pity for the ruler. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke Pu Jingwan. Hee, that's me. It seemed the old man knew what Pu Jingwan was talking about. He snorted, You cut off my aura, so I knew there was something up with you. Now that he could not produce his crystal card and had beaten up a city guard, he was even more guilty. Little girl, you should obediently follow this old man back to accept the investigation. The old man on the black cloud had a savage smile on his face. Pu Jingwan also grinned. She flexed her right wrist with her left hand, and then her eyes narrowed. Since it's you, that's great. Boom. He punched. A beam of golden light condensed into a single line, and the fist smashed into the old man's face. Pu Jingwan's punch sent the old man crashing into the ground, leaving behind a human-shaped crater. It was impossible to tell if he was dead or alive. One punch, instant kill. Although Yi Zichen knew Pu Jingwan was fierce, he hadn't expected her to be this strong. Yi Zichen gulped, then craned his neck and looked into the crater. The old man, who'd been beaten into a pit by Pu Jingwan, hadn't reacted in the slightest. He hadn't even twitched. Perverted old man. You want to grab my breasts? Why don't you take a look at your wrinkled face? Even if I were single for tens of thousands of years, I still wouldn't let someone like you touch my holy land. Pu Jingwan muttered as she flexed her wrist. When he heard that, Yi Zichen almost tripped over. He snuck up to her and nudged her with his shoulder. That old man isn't dead, is he? Pu Jingwan glanced at the old man in the crater. Who knows? It's better if he's dead. Just think of it as ridding the world of evil. The people on the streets were dumbfounded. If they weren't mistaken, that old man was the ancestor of the Wang family, one of the God Emperor's 8 aristocratic families. He'd been a ruler-level expert for thousands of years. 90% of the Wang family's status as one of the 8 aristocratic families was due to this old man. But one punch, instant kill. The onlookers didn't even dare imagine what kind of person could kill a ruler with a single punch. Could it be that the Wang family's ancestor had entered a period of decline? Was he no longer a ruler-level expert? You really are infuriating. Pu Jingwan was still cursing him with her hands on her hips. When she recalled how the old man had tried to probe her aura, and how he'd tried to grab her breasts, Pu Jingwan was infuriated. This wasn't the first era, and this wasn't her territory. If this were her territory, she'd definitely find a few men to let this old pervert enjoy the feeling of being loved. After calming down a bit, Pu Jingwan asked Yi Zichen, "Don't worry. It won't bring you any trouble, will it? Beating up Zhou Wu's ruler in his territory would definitely bring him some trouble." However, he wouldn't blame Pu Jingwan for this. After all, when she'd attacked, he hadn't done anything to stop her. In other words, he supported Pu Jingwan's decision. Yi Zichen shook his head and chuckled, then pulled a transmission jade slip from his pocket. A short while later, Xianji hurried over from within the city. When the city guards saw Xianji, they all greeted her respectfully. Earlier, they hadn't known how to resolve the situation at hand and had been thinking of going to the God Emperor's estate to find her. Now that Xianji was here, there was no need for them to worry. "Your Highness," the guards assumed she'd come to resolve the matter, but before they could say anything, she ignored them and flew straight to Yi Zichen's side. As she landed, she looked Pu Jingwan up and down, then arched her brows. "Kid, you're really lucky with women. Every time, the girls standing next to me are all the same, and they're all so pretty." "Auntie, don't mess around," said Yi Zichen with a bitter smile. Yi Zichen smiled wryly. When the guards heard that, they were all dumbfounded. "Auntie?" Suddenly, they recalled the young man with an astonishing background who'd appeared in the city. Lady Xianji had called herself his auntie, and said his mother was the Lord of 7 Stars of the Saint Palace. Could it be? While everyone was still in shock, Xianji nodded in satisfaction. "Not bad. So you've learned to call her auntie. Furthermore, you've just arrived in Heavenly God City, and you've already greeted me. You." At that moment, out of the corner of her eye, Xianji noticed an old man lying in a nearby pit. She glanced at the onlookers' expressions and Yi Zichen's embarrassed smile. She narrowed her eyes, then hooked her finger at the man in the pit. The old man, who had been embedded in the ground, floated up. When he came out of the ground, his face had already changed beyond recognition. Xianji stared at him for a long time. When she saw a jade pendant hanging from his waist, she froze, then looked away. "Kid, you..." Xianji dragged out her last syllable. Yi Zichen rubbed his hands together and giggled foolishly, then dragged out his last syllable like a spoiled child. Chapter 1359. Pill of Fortune. If Yi Zichen had a mirror in front of him and saw his current expression, he'd definitely throw up all the food he'd eaten the night before. He pursed his lips, grabbed Xianji's arm, and shook it back and forth. He wasn't mistaken. He was acting spoiled in front of Xianji. The surrounding cultivators froze. Pu Jingwan's eyes went wide, and she looked back and forth at Yi Zichen as if she'd seen a ghost. Ugh! Perhaps because she'd been disgusted by Yi Zichen's coquetry, Pu Jingwan turned her head away and pretended to vomit. Yi Zichen was a half-step diviner expert, so he was quite sensitive to sound. He naturally heard Pu Jingwan's act, but all he did was tilt his head and glare at her. When he looked at Xianji, his smile was still as childish as ever. His eyes were filled with little stars, and he couldn't help but shake Xianji's arm. "Auntie!" Yi Zichen didn't say anything else. He simply looked at her coquettishly. Just by looking at his expression, Xianji knew that he was begging her to help him suppress the current situation. "You always know how to make trouble for me." She glared at Yi Zichen, then shook his hand off. Yi Zichen simply laughed. Yi Zichen just chuckled. He knew that since Xianji was rebuking him like that, it meant she'd help him. She sighed at Yi Zichen, then turned around and called over the captain of the guards who'd stopped Yi Zichen and the others. "Lady Providence." No matter what the guard captain saw, Xianji was the profound pavilion's head. In the face of such an existence, he had to lower himself to the extreme. Furthermore, since Xianji had called him over, he could more or less guess what she wanted to tell him. Xianji set the Wang family ancestor, who'd been beaten beyond recognition by Pu Jingwan, on the ground. Then she took out a jade bottle. "This is a pill of fortune." When they heard that, the onlookers couldn't help but gasp. Even Yi Zichen's gaze lit up. A pill of fortune. A divine-grade medicinal pill. As long as a strand of soul remained in the body of a dying person, it would be able to bring them back to life. It could be considered as a peerless pill for recovering injuries. Not only that, after consuming this pill, there was a chance of obtaining good fortune from heaven and earth, and a seed that would allow one to break through to the sovereign realm. In order to become a hegemon, luck, talent, and luck were all necessary. There were over 100 billion cultivators in the 9 divine mountains of the god race, and perhaps tens of millions of diviners. However, there were less than 1,000 who could truly become rulers. From this, it could be seen just how minuscule the chances of becoming a ruler were. Countless talented experts were stuck at the peak of the Deva realm, unable to take even half a step forward. This was like a natural chasm, and it was extremely difficult to cross this barrier. However, the origin pill could leave behind a seed that could allow the user to become a ruler. Of course, it wasn't a guarantee that the user would be able to break through, but at the very least, the chances of becoming a ruler were higher than normal cultivation. Yi Zichen couldn't help but gulp when he saw the bottle. Not even the pill refiners of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's second floor could refine such a pill. In order to refine this pill, one must be a peak divine grade alchemist. This pill had always been priceless. Even the Skyspan Trading Company hadn't auctioned off a single one in tens of thousands of years, and its circulation was limited to the most powerful cultivators of the god race. However, one had to be on the brink of death or be gravely injured to consume it. Otherwise, it could only heal injuries, but there was no way to obtain good fortune. Was she going to use this pill to calm things down? The guard captain's eyes burned with passion. He stared at the pill in Xianji's hands in a daze, his heart pounding madly. After all, after becoming a diviner, one's temperament would undergo massive changes. Very few things could disturb one's state of mind. But this was a pill of fortune. It wasn't as simple as a pill. It was a stepping stone to becoming a ruler. If one could take advantage of the pill of fortune and seize this opportunity, they could become a ruler who looked down on billions of lives. It wasn't just him. Anyone who hadn't become a ruler yet would react the same way when they saw the pill. Who knew? Their emotions might be even more intense than his. He licked his lips and stared at the pill in Xianji's hands, his eyes burning with passion. Could it be? There are 13 pills of fortune in here. Give one to Wang Chun and the other to him. Treat it as a gift for his clansmen. My request is that you don't make trouble for my nephew in the future. As for the other pills, each of you guards can take one. Whether or not you can steal the good fortune inside will depend on your luck. What I want you to do, we definitely won't take this matter to heart, said the guard captain. Not only will we not take it to heart, but I also don't want this matter to reach the God Emperor's ears. The God Emperor has been very tired lately and doesn't have the energy to worry about these things. Do you understand? The guard captain looked around at the people on the street. If it were just Xianji and the others, he could naturally ensure that this matter wouldn't reach the God Emperor's ears. But there were so many people here, and so many mouths were everywhere, he didn't dare make such a promise. That's your problem. The pills of fortune are right here. Whether you want them or not, it's up to you. Xianji smiled calmly. No matter what, he couldn't give up on the pills of fortune. The guard captain was keenly aware that his talent was limited. Reaching the 3rd stage of the diviner realm was probably his limit. But if he could get his hands on the pills of fortune, he'd have a chance to reach the heavens in a single bound. This was a hard-won opportunity. How could he give it up? I'll definitely do it. Xianji nodded confidently. Without another word, she tossed the jade bottle to the guard captain. She's really giving it to him. When Yi Zichen saw that Xianji had really given away the pills of fortune, he felt his heart ache. Right now, he had the urge to do whatever he wanted. At worst, he'd just have to fight Zhou Wu. The pills of fortune were the most important. However, he'd already given them away, so there was no point in him acting like this now. All he could do was watch helplessly as the pills of fortune landed in the guard captain's hands. His heart ached. The captain of the guards carefully grabbed it. When he held the pill of fortune in his hand, He desperately wanted to open it. However, when he remembered that Xianji was still here and that there were so many people around, he forcibly suppressed the urge in his heart and put the jade bottle into his spatial divine artifact. "Lady Providence, if you have no other orders, I'll take my leave," said the guard captain, his face flushed with excitement. Xianji nodded slightly and glanced at the ancestor of the Wang family on the ground. The guard captain understood. Xianji looked away, reached out, and grabbed Yi Zichen by the ear. Chapter 1360. Chapter 1360. Letting nature take its course, Yi Zichen had no way of knowing what would happen after that. At this time, Xianji had already pinched his ear and brought him to her residence. However, it didn't seem like there would be any major problems. The captain of the guards had made such a solemn vow, and it was Xianji who'd given him the pill of fortune. He wouldn't dare refuse. Otherwise, after obtaining the pill of fortune from Xianji, if he didn't handle this matter well, he wouldn't be able to survive in the god realm in the future. "Andy, it hurts, it hurts. Hurry up and let go." Xianji was really arrogant. Yi Zichen felt like his left ear wasn't his anymore. As soon as he entered the residence, he hurriedly patted her hand and complained about the pain. Xianji snorted and let go. When she did, Yi Zichen felt his ear burn. As he rubbed it, he saw Xianji glaring at him. "Auntie," she was acting spoiled again. This time, Xianji didn't give Yi Zichen as much face as she did outside. "Don't act spoiled. How old are you? Stop acting like a child in front of me," said Xianji. That's right. Pu Jingwan nodded in agreement. She couldn't stand Yi Zichen acting spoiled either. "Shut up." Yi Zichen glared at Pu Jingwan. She still had the nerve to talk back? If she hadn't gone overboard, would things have turned out this way? Although Yi Zichen hadn't tried to stop her, before he could say anything else, he felt someone tug on his right ear. "Who are you yelling at? Who are you yelling at? You got yourself into trouble, yet you want me to clean up after you? Why is this lady looking for you? You just shout at this lady." She glared at Yi Zichen, then let go. She smiled warmly at Pu Jingwan. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'll support you." "Thank you, Auntie." Pu Jingwan smiled sweetly. Yi Zichen was as speechless as he could be. He pursed his lips, sat down, and reached for the divine fruit. "Put down? Did I say you could move?" This shout startled Yi Zichen so much that his hands trembled. At the same time, Xianji glared at him and put the divine fruit away. "You still have the nerve to eat it? Do you know how much the nature pills I just gave out are worth?" At the mention of the pill of fortune, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Putting away the speechlessness in his heart, he rubbed his hands together and shamelessly moved closer. "Annie, do you have any more fortune pills? Can you give me some?" "No." Xianji coldly rolled her eyes at Yi Zichen, then snorted. "And here I thought you were sensible enough to tell me when you got back to the Divine Mountains. Well, after all this time, you wanted me to clean up your mess. If you can cause trouble, you have to be able to resolve it. Don't you understand such a simple logic? I feel ashamed to have a nephew like you. You even have the cheek to ask me for the nature pill. Do you know that all the benefits I've gotten from your mother for so many years have all been returned just now? I've really suffered a great loss." From start to finish, Yi Zichen just scratched his head. He didn't dare to argue or retort. He was well aware of the value of the nature pills, and he knew that she'd really gone all out this time. "It's just nature pills, isn't it? When the outside's resources arrive, I'll ask them for 100 bottles and return them to you." Yi Zichen pursed his lips. "The outside? You really went to the outside?" asked Xianji. "I did, and I even negotiated a big deal with them." Yi Zichen didn't feel like there was any need to hide such things from her. He trusted his mother's judgment. Since she'd chosen to be Xianji's best friend, she was naturally one of them. "How was it? After you went, your worldview exploded, didn't it?" Xianji chuckled. Xianji's smile was light, and her raised brows made it clear that she'd long since known about the outside connection to the Third Era. It was as if everything was under her control. Yi Zichen couldn't help but find this strange. She even knew about the outside situation. Why was it that when he'd proposed to buy it on his behalf, she'd said she couldn't divine it at all? Was there really something in the world that even she couldn't divine? Yi Zichen didn't think too much about it. He nodded unhappily and said, "Explosive. Quite explosive. That's for sure. There are no more than 5 people in the entire Third Era who know about the relationship between the First Era and the Third Era, and you're one of them. But don't worry too much. It's best to let nature take its course. If you try too hard to fight for it, it'll have the opposite effect. Her speech is always so clouded that it's hard to tell what she's trying to say. Could she be referring to celestial fate? Or something else? For Yizichin, this kind of person was the most difficult to communicate with. No matter what she said, she would stop there. As for what she wanted to say, it was up to others to guess. But no matter what she wanted to say, Yizichin simply nodded. I know. His original intention was to let nature take its course. He didn't want to deliberately get what he wanted. If it wasn't for the fact that Gu Li was in the dark and he was in the light, he had no idea how to obtain Gu Li's celestial fate. Even God Emperor Zhou Wu, a colossus that stood at the top of the God realm, could not be seen on the surface. Even if he had the outside support, gaining the right to challenge him wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight. He had to take things slowly and let nature take its course. It's good that you understand. Xianji didn't know if Yizichin really understood her, but all she could do was stop there. She could divine. Her divination abilities were unfathomable. But the more she knew, the more burdens she had to bear. There were some things that only she could know, but she couldn't say. If she said it herself, she didn't even dare imagine what the consequences would be. Stopping there was the most she could do for Yizichin. As for how much he could understand, that would depend on his comprehension abilities. Let's not talk about that. What did you come back to Heavenly God City for? Asked Xianji. Can't you divine? Said Yizichin. Do you think divination is as simple as eating? If you say you can divine it, then so be it. I have too many heavenly secrets to divine. I don't have time to deal with your trivial matters, said Xianji, rolling her eyes. After another round of insults, Yizichin pursed his lips innocently. Naturally, I came back for the Battle of Geniuses, but of course I have a few other things to do. After that, Yizichin told Xianji about the plans he'd discussed with Xiao Yume in Skyspan City. Naturally, he didn't forget to mention Xiao Ting's cooperation with the Yao and demons. As she listened, Xianji's eyes grew brighter and brighter, and a smile spread across her face. Kid, your idea is pretty interesting. Chapter 1361. Lady Providence, who regarded wealth as her life when she saw Yizichin's eager expression, she chuckled and shook her head in refusal. The plan was indeed a good one, and it sounded interesting and exciting. If she were an ordinary person and not the focus of the billions of gods, she might really nod and agree. What Yizichin said just now really did sound very tempting. Unfortunately, she was Xianji, the pavilion master of Heavenly God City's profound pavilion. She was Lady Providence, who served God Emperor Zhou Wu. Her every move was exposed to the eyes of the public, so she had to consider the impact. To put it nicely, his plan was exciting, but when he thought about it carefully, his idea was a little crazy. Joining his plan required not only interest, but courage as well. Xianji never lacked courage, but she had to think about her subordinates. That's too bad. You missed out on a chance to change history. Yizichin sighed on Xianji's behalf and shrugged. It is indeed a pity, said Xianji, unmoved. In truth, Yizichin had never really considered letting her join his plan. No one knew better than him just how insane it was. As the profound pavilion's pavilion master, everything about her was like a wind vane to the God Race clansmen. If she joined in, it might cause a lot of panic in the God Race, which would have the effect of alerting the enemy. Although he said this, he had once thought that Xianji would actually join them. If Xianji were to join them, then the entire profound pavilion would stand behind her, including all the major, small, and medium-sized powers that relied on the profound pavilion. Moreover, with the support of the profound pavilion behind him, everything he did would be justifiable and justified. Anyway, if Xianji wanted to join his plan, he'd raise both his hands and feet in approval. If she didn't want to join, it wouldn't affect his plan much. Besides, his main purpose in coming here was not to persuade her to join him. However, a little help is fine, right? Yizichin smiled. This was the main reason he had come to find Xianji. If he wanted to carry out his plan, he needed some prerequisites. If he were to rely solely on himself and use his status as the Outer Realm Special Envoy to make a request to God Emperor Zhou Wu, Yi Zichen believed that he wouldn't refuse in this ambiguous situation. But in the future, God Emperor Zhou Wu would absolutely ponder Yi Zichen's actions. As a result, he didn't want to use God Emperor Zhou Wu to advance his goal. Xianji was second only to Zhou Wu in Heavenly God City. He believed that if he went to her, he would be able to achieve the same result. Furthermore, given their previous relationship, he wasn't worried that she would expose him. This time, Xianji paused. She naturally knew what Yi Zichen needed help with. Have you really thought about this? Xianji did not immediately agree. Instead, she repeated her question with a serious gaze. She was worried that Yi Zichen was acting on impulse and acting on impulse. Naturally, Yi Zichen nodded confidently and smiled. You should know that I have the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, right? Although I will be a rising force in the God race, my combat power will not be inferior to the other families. Besides, the Yao servants in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda are no different from those clansmen who have been around for tens of thousands of years. They definitely won't betray me. The only difference between me and them is history. Of course, with the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, you can naturally form your own faction, but you need to know who you'll be facing in the future. Just the Yao servants in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Don't I still have you? Yi Zichen chuckled. Don't change the subject. You should know that I can't openly support you. Even your mother can't do it. Your plans have already affected the highest echelons of the God race. All I can do is do my best to prevent the other factions from suppressing you. That's all. Yi Zichen knew that she was telling the truth. She really was worried about him. Yi Zichen chuckled, then glanced at Pu Jingwan. Having her, isn't that enough? Xianji didn't even try to hide her gaze. Pu Jingwan's eyes were wide as she stared back at Yi Zichen and Xianji. She couldn't understand the conversation between the two of them at all, and now they were talking about her, which made her a little surprised. From the first era? Asked Xianji. Yi Zichen nodded. Xianji looked Pu Jingwan up and down, then said, If it's her, her cultivation is high enough, but if she wants to support your plans on her own, it's not enough. There's also the emissary from the other day. 2 of them? This time, Xianji was silent for a long while. She was considering whether or not the 2 of them could affect Yi Zichen's plans. After a long silence, she shook her head. The 2 of them are enough to intimidate a faction, but since you want to establish a faction, you're lacking mid-level experts. What if I had 20 rulers? Laughed Yi Zichen. What's going on with the first era? They even sent 20 rulers? Xianji was stunned, but this time, she didn't shake her head. With Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan, Yi Zichen only lacked ordinary rulers. He didn't need many of them. 5 or 6 would be enough. If Yi Zichen said 20, and there were Yao servants in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, then his faction would rival the other 8 Divine Mountains' holy lands. It was just as Yi Zichen said. He didn't lack people. He lacked a solid foundation of history. At this point, there was no need for Xianji to worry about him. If Yi Zichen wasn't just bragging, and everything he said was true, then the people he had would be more than enough to support his plans. As for herself, although she couldn't participate in this exciting plan, she could still help out in some small ways. All right, leave everything to me. I'll prepare everything you need as soon as possible, but how are we going to pay for this? Asked Xianji. If she wanted to prepare everything Yi Zichen needed, she'd need an ocean's worth of funds. As his aunt, she could give him a few trinkets, but her money didn't grow on trees. Furthermore, everyone in the God realm knew that she valued money as much as her life. Help me pay for it first. In a few days, when the outsiders send the resources over, I'll pay you back, said Yi Zichen. How long? Half a month at most. Yi Zichen's expression was confident. Xianji looked him up and down in disbelief, then thought for a while. Fine, but you have to pay me interest. How much? Asked Yi Zichen. Double. Before he'd even finished speaking, Xianji spoke up again. Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. If you don't agree, you can find someone else. In any case, I'm not losing anything. Don't even think about threatening me with pills of fortune. I'll just treat those pills as the profits I got from your mother. I won't feel any heartache. Wait, you want me to pay you back with pills of fortune, said Yi Zichen. I used those pills for you in the first place. Don't you want to pay me back? Xianji furrowed her brows. Yi Zichen sighed deeply. His plan had to go through with kumquat love. Otherwise, the more time passed, the more passive he'd become. When he saw his aunt, who refused to budge an inch, he couldn't help but grimace. Chapter 1362. The God Emperor's invitation. No matter what Yi Zichen's expression was like, so long as he agreed, Xianji's mood improved tremendously. She'd spent so much money to resolve the matter, but now all her frustrations were swept away. She giggled, patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder, and nodded solemnly. No problem. Leave everything to me. I'll make sure you're satisfied. Yi Zichen couldn't help but stare at the sharp contrast. Just now, he'd understood his aunt's personality. She valued money as much as her life. If he said she was stingy, she just generously tossed out a dozen pills of fortune. If you said she was generous, she was a senior. How could she haggle over every ounce with a junior? She even demanded double compensation. Even though Yi Zichen had the outside backing him, he didn't need to bleed. Even so, the thought of double compensation still pained him to no end. If he gave upheaval twice the resources, they might be able to nurture quite a few experts capable of holding their own. In truth, any faction's leader would be like that. They had to fight for resources for their faction and nurture their subordinates. But the way Yi Zichen saw it, Xianji was just greedy. What kind of subordinates did she have? Divine generals. Did she need to nurture people of that level? She obviously didn't. And yet, she still couldn't let go of money. Wasn't that just because she valued money as much as her life? Yi Zichen pursed his lips, then glanced at Xianji, who was still smiling at their victory. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Now you know you're my aunt." Xianji ignored Yi Zichen's mutterings. She'd taken advantage of him, so she had to restrain herself. "My dear nephew, I'm off to tend to your affairs. If you want to stay here, then stay. If not, you can go to the Divine Martial Academy." Xianji smiled. Did the Battle of Geniuses take place? After that huge commotion, Yi Zichen and Yang Jian had left for the outside. He wasn't sure if the Battle of Geniuses had taken place, but judging by the security around Heavenly God City, as well as the occasional Yao and demon experts, the Battle of Geniuses was most likely still going on. Otherwise, there was no way those Yao and demon experts would be so brazen as to roam Heavenly God City. Of course, this is a rare opportunity for the Yao race and demon race to freely enter the Divine Mountain. How could they give it up so easily? Xianji's smile faded and she snorted. Those guys have been up to some tricks lately. Haven't you seen it for yourself? Security in Heavenly God City is very tight. They investigate everyone very strictly. Yi Zichen nodded. He had experienced this firsthand. If it weren't for the strict investigation, he wouldn't have caused such a commotion. He arched his brows at Xianji, then pointed at Pu Jingwan. Aunt Jingwan is from the outer region. She doesn't have her Divine Mountain's crystal card, and it's very inconvenient for her to move around the Divine Mountain. Do you have any way to make her? This is simple. As she spoke, she took out a piece of white jade branded with the character Xian and placed it in Pu Jingwan's hand. In the future, if anyone tries to investigate you, show them this jade token. Once they see this jade token, they won't investigate you anymore. The jade token was made of white jade, but it was just an ordinary forging material. There was nothing special about it. At first glance, it was probably just a symbol of status in the profound pavilion. Pu Jingwan nodded in thanks, then put away. Although her cultivation was high enough that she could do whatever she wanted on the Divine Mountain, she didn't want to resort to violence every time. Since she had this jade token, she naturally liked it. Pu Jingwan nodded in thanks, then put away. She was as gentle as a kitten. She couldn't be so fierce every day. If Yi Zichen knew what she was thinking, he'd definitely copy the way she'd booed Yi Zichen and pretend to puke. She was as gentle as a kitten? Ugh. Yi Zichen punched the Wang family ancestor right in the face, embedding him several meters into the ground. Gentle like that? By now, Xianji was already preparing to carry out Yi Zichen's request. She knew his plan and knew that they couldn't afford to delay. Judging from the flickering jade slip in her hand, she was probably already contacting all the connections she could use. Yi Zichen prepared to return to the Divine Martial Academy to see his friends at Skyspan Academy. No matter what, he was one of Anti-Upheaval's participants in the Battle of Geniuses. Fortunately, every team could send a substitute. Otherwise, Anti-Upheaval would be done for. However, Xianji, who was in the middle of sending messages, suddenly furrowed her brows. "Don't go yet. Someone wants to see you." Xianji put the jade slip away and walked over. When Yi Zichen heard this, he turned around and saw that her expression wasn't particularly good. "Zhou Wu? Oh, little guy, could it be that you're talented in divination as well?" Xianji smiled calmly. This indirectly proved that Zhou Wu really did want to see him. Yi Zichen chuckled. All cultivators knew how to perform divination, but it depended on whether they were skilled or not. Given Yi Zichen's skill in this field, how could he possibly know that Zhou Wu was looking for him? All he'd done was analyze Xianji's expression and the actual situation. In the entire Divine Mountain, the only person who could make her look so serious was God Emperor Zhou Wu. "Do you know why he's looking for me?" asked Yi Zichen. "How could I possibly know? No one can guess what he's thinking. But if you really think about it, there are only a few reasons why he's looking for you," said Xianji. "The Yao Ceiling Pagoda? The 5 Elements Great Emperor, or the outside?" asked Yi Zichen. "It seems you're more or less aware of the situation." Xianji smiled non-committally. "But no matter which reason he wants to see me, it's not a good thing for me, is it?" said Yi Zichen. Xianji pursed her lips, but didn't deny it. The relationship between the 5 Elements Great Emperor and Zhou Wu was completely unknown to the ordinary people of the God Realm. How exactly did he obtain the Emperor's celestial fate? How did he ascend to the position of God Emperor? However, people at Xianji's level were well aware of the situation. Comparatively speaking, it was better for the outside to seek Yi Zichen out. Even Zhou Wu had to be wary of the outside. But the Yao Ceiling Pagoda had appeared, and it was in Yi Zichen's hands at that. How could he possibly not mention it? "Do I have to go?" asked Yi Zichen. "You have to go." Xianji gave an affirmative answer to Yi Zichen's question. Regardless of why he wants to see you, and regardless of the conflict between you, he's still the God Emperor of the God Realm. If he wants to see a minor cultivator like you, who hasn't even become a diviner, it's like an ancient emperor wanting to see a commoner. What reason do you have to refuse? But you don't need to worry. Let this girl follow you. Add to that your relationship with the First Era, and he won't dare do anything to you. Even if he's the God Emperor, if he wants to deal with someone with connections to the outside, he'll have to think twice about whether or not it's a good deal. As he listened to Xianji's analysis, Yi Zichen sank into deep thought. She was right, but then he thought about it. The God Emperor was a lofty existence, and he hadn't angered him in the slightest. There was no reason for him to lower himself to deal with a nobody like him. Besides, in the future, he'd steal the God Emperor's celestial fate. They'd run into each other sooner or later. He just brought it forward a little. In that case, what exactly was Zhou Wu planning? Chapter 1363. The Divine Arbiter Up in the Sky. After confirming that they were going to see Zhou Wu, Xianji led Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan away from Heavenly God City. As they headed north, Heavenly God City grew further and further away from them. Even with Yi Zichen's half-step diviner eyesight, he couldn't quite make out the largest city in the God Realm. If Zhou Wu isn't looking for me, shouldn't we go to his estate? Yi Zichen watched the city disappear from sight. He couldn't help but ask Xianji. "The God Emperor isn't in Heavenly God City right now," said Xianji. "He really is ambitious. Even in a time like this, he dares not personally oversee the city. This is a great opportunity. If the Yao and demons suddenly launch an attack on Heavenly God City, wouldn't it be interesting if their headquarters were destroyed?" said Yi Zichen. "The gods have stood between the Yao and demons for hundreds of millions of years. Do you really think they'll be so easy to conquer?" Xianji glanced at Yi Zichen, her gaze deep and meaningful. It was as if she were replying to Yi Zichen's joke, but at the same time, it was as if she were ringing a warning bell. Yi Zichen felt a bit uncomfortable and looked away. When he looked away, Xianji sighed. It's not as simple as you think. In order to save time, Xianji wrapped Yi Zichen in her divine power and hurried on as fast as she could. Several hours passed, but they still hadn't reached Zhou Wu's location. Yi Zichen lost track of how many mountain ranges they'd passed. Suddenly, a white mist appeared before him. "We're here." Xianji, who'd wrapped Yi Zichen with her divine power, stopped and retracted it. The instant it disappeared, Yi Zichen instinctively shouted, "It's so hot! It's so hot!" Yi Zichen hurriedly used his divine power to erect an astral wall around him. Only then did he feel a bit better. However, the onslaught of heat was still unbearable. Only then did he notice that the white mist he'd seen earlier was actually white smoke. Right in front of them should be an active volcano. Why is Zhou Wu in a place like this? Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter to himself. When you see the God Emperor later, remember to pinpoint your position. Don't think too highly of yourself. At the end of the day, he was the person who stood at the peak of this world. The reason why he called the foreign emissary brother was because his realm was similar to Zhou Wu's. He had to give the foreign emissary some face. You're just a celestial being. Even if you have a relationship with the outer realm, it's nothing in his eyes. After all, this is the third era, not the first era. However, don't put yourself too low, or else he will look down on you. As for the degree, you just have to control yourself. Xianji focused her gaze and transmitted to Yi Zichen. She didn't speak directly. This place was already within the range of the God Emperor's domain. Even the slightest movement here would be known by him. After receiving the transmission, Yi Zichen nodded. He wasn't an idiot. He understood the simple principle of speaking to different people. As for putting on airs, he naturally wouldn't do that. All experts had their own pride. Not to mention God Emperor Zhou Wu, who controlled the entire celestial race. Even a small figure like him would definitely go up and give that heaven immortal a few slaps if a heaven immortal expert shouted at him, because he had the backing of a powerful expert. It's good that you know what you're doing. Xianji's transmission appeared in his sea of consciousness once more. She turned to Pu Jingwan. "Jingwan, use your divine power to relieve some of the pressure on him. Given his current cultivation, there's no way he'll be able to take it." "I'm done for." Pu Jingwan seized the opportunity to mock Yi Zichen, but her divine power didn't cover her. Yi Zichen was speechless in the face of such mockery. His cultivation was inferior to hers. What could he say? The only person he could complain about was Zhou Wu. The god race was vast, but he'd chosen to meet here. It was intentional, wasn't it? Just as Yi Zichen was cursing God Emperor Zhou Wu inwardly, a nun floated towards them from the direction of the active volcano. "Lady Providence, the God Emperor has been waiting inside for a long time. He specially asked me to bring you in." The nun's tone was very soft. Xianji said, "Don't worry." "Thank you, Divine Arbiter." Yi Zichen followed the nun into the Divine Mountain. As they got closer and closer to the volcano, the surrounding temperature rose exponentially, and Pu Jingwan's divine power increased correspondingly as well. After another hour or so, Yi Zichen and company arrived at the foot of the volcano. Yi Zichen stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the volcano in front of him. The entire volcano towered into the clouds, while scorching lava flowed down the crater. In such an extremely hot environment, no vegetation could grow in the surroundings. As far as the eye could see, the surrounding environment also seemed to be scorched by magma. At the foot of the volcano were dozens of meter-deep ditches. The scorching lava flowed into these ditches, then converged in front of a thatched hut covered in jade-green vines. Neither the thatched hut nor the vines were burned by the scorching lava. When the lava got within 10 meters of the hut, it vanished into thin air. Yi Zichen had no idea where it went. "Your Excellency, I'm truly envious of your attainments in the art of space," said Xianji. "You praise me too much, Lady Providence. Your divination techniques are truly impressive," said the Divine Arbiter. Yi Zichen couldn't help but knit his brows. Attainments in the art of space? Then he recalled that Xianji had been looking in the direction of the thatched hut. Could it be that the hut's space was isolated from the outside world? No wonder, even though it was clearly just a thatched hut, it was unscathed by the lava and even had vines growing around it. Also, the lava that disappeared 10 meters away from the straw hut should have been teleported to another place. This nun wasn't ordinary at all. You people are so strong. I can't see through your ante, and I can't see through this nun either, transmitted Pu Jingwan to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen froze inexplicably. Even Pu Jingwan said she couldn't see through her. This nun, just what kind of people did the God Emperor surround Zhou Wu? It seemed that Xianji's earlier words really were a warning. He'd thought that with Pu Jingwan and Yang Jian's help, he could do whatever he wanted in the Third Era. It seemed things really weren't as simple as he'd thought. The Divine Arbiter and Xianji exchanged flattering glances with Yi Zichen. When Yi Zichen noticed her gaze, he instinctively tensed up. This is the youth the God Emperor wanted to see, as well as your dear nephew, right? Asked the Divine Arbiter, her tone as warm as ever. That's right, that good-for-nothing nephew of mine. Xianji nodded. Lady Providence, you must be joking. I heard the Xinyuan sword and Yao Sealing Pagoda are in his hands. He's won the favor of 2 peerless divine artifacts. Yet you say he's good for nothing? What about my juniors? The Divine Arbiter shook her head. Yi Zichen's expression instantly froze. She'd brought up the Xinyuan sword and the Yao Sealing Pagoda at a time like this. Although it sounded like she'd brought them up in passing, there was absolutely no way it was that simple. How could this kid possibly compare to the Divine Arbiter's juniors? Your little niece is a divine general of the God Realm, and she's in charge of defending a territory. Even your eldest nephew can go toe-to-toe with Shui Yang. Look at my nephew. He hasn't even reached the diviner level yet. He didn't win the favor of a divine artifact just because he was lucky. Chapter 1364. The God Emperor has appeared that the Divine Arbiter was the only one in the vicinity of the volcano. From watching period dramas, it was easy to see that when ancient emperors were traveling incognito or high officials were accompanied by their most trusted aides. From this, it was clear how important the Divine Arbiter was to the God Emperor and how much he trusted her. Normally, trusted aides would pledge their lives to their master. Never mind the fact that the Divine Arbiter's cultivation was so high that not even Pu Jingwan could see through her. Just now, Xianji had mentioned her juniors. Her youngest niece was a divine general, and her oldest nephew was strong enough to fight Shui Yang. Who was Shui Yang? He was the emperor of the Northern Divine Mountain, the Sea of Innocence. He ruled over an entire divine mountain, setting aside just how many subordinate clans the God Emperor's estate had. Just the Divine Arbiter's juniors alone were enough to shock anyone who heard of them. Yi Zichen tried to control his emotions, but when he heard all this, his heart raced. Thump! Thump! Just what kind of colossus would the God Emperor be? He'd only revealed the tip of the iceberg, but it was already enough to make him feel this way. He had to calm down. Yi Zichen lowered his head and gradually calmed his racing heart. The Divine Arbiter was one of Zhou Wu's subordinates. The God Emperor had called him here, which meant he'd clearly noticed him. If he acted too unnaturally, the God Emperor's attention would only deepen. What should he do now? If he were just a cultivator with no enmity towards the God Emperor, then what should he do? How should he behave at this time? Yi Zichen, who remained silent, continuously calculated in his heart. Then he thought of how he should behave. He felt a little awkward, a little humiliated, and grumbled. Auntie. With a soft call, Yi Zichen's expression and state of mind transformed into the expression he'd imagined. From start to finish, the Divine Arbiter's smile was as gentle as ever. However, no one noticed that she glanced at Yi Zichen several times. From a moment he'd heard Xianji mention the Divine Arbiter's cultivation realm, his heart had raced, to the moment he'd gradually calmed down and pretended to be a reluctant child after being exposed by Xianji. She'd seen everything. Although it was only for an instant, she'd still seen it. She withdrew her gaze. There was no longer any need for her to pay too much attention to Yi Zichen. The other party had already concealed the changes in his emotions very well, so he would definitely not give himself away in the future. She knew everything she wanted to know. You still want me to talk about it? You only know how to cause trouble for me, your aunt. Tell me, how did I end up with an unlucky nephew like you? Look at the divine arbiter's descendants. Some of their grandchildren have even become divine generals. Look at you. Xianji's mouth was full of sighs. She was no different from an elder who was worried to death for her juniors. Yi Zichen scratched his head, then lowered it, as if he couldn't face Xianji's words. But as he lowered his head, all he could think about was whether or not he had fooled the divine arbiter. All right, Xianji, my juniors have all lived for hundreds of years. The level of one's realm also depended on how long one had cultivated. This had nothing to do with seniority. Given your nephew's talent, I'm sure that by the time he reaches my nephew's age, he'll be even more accomplished than he is, said the divine arbiter with a smile. I don't have any delusions that he can compare to that kid, Jinghua. If he can become a ruler while he's still alive, I'll burn incense to the heavens, said Xianji with a sigh. Jinghua. Xianji's seemingly casual mention of his name, but Yi Zichen committed it to memory. If Jinghua was strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Shui Yang, he might become a major obstacle in his future plans to deal with Zhou Wu. The divine arbiter laughed, as if to end this conversation. After a few more sighs, she spoke again. Why isn't the God Emperor here yet? Ha ha ha. Hearty laughter reverberated through the sky. Yi Zichen looked in the direction of the voice and saw a man covered in flowing lava emerge from the mouth of the volcano. Scorching hot magma dripped from his body onto the ground. After coming into contact with the magma, a small pit instantly appeared on the ground. It could be seen just how high the temperature of the magma was, but that person was completely unscathed under the magma. The God Emperor? Yi Zichen silently watched the lava man fall to the ground. As the lava receded, the man's appearance was revealed. His face was resolute and hearty, and his expression was dignified. His entire body radiated a heroic aura. Yi Zichen had seen this man before. He was none other than the God race's God Emperor, Zhou Wu. Greetings, Your Majesty. Xianji bowed in greeting, and Yi Zichen followed suit. Only Pu Jingwan didn't move. She simply watched calmly. Pu Jingwan's inaction naturally drew Zhou Wu's attention, but he only glanced at her for a moment, then looked away. Chuckling, he helped Xianji and Yi Zichen to their feet. When there's no one else around, there's no need for such cliché. Zhou Wu smiled calmly, then turned to Xianji. Just now, I thought I heard you ask why I wasn't here yet. What? Could it be that I've made you wait too long? Are you getting impatient, Lady Providence? God Emperor, Xianji tried to explain, but the God Emperor cut her off. He shook his head and said, I was just joking. Why do you have to be so serious about everything you do? You're one of the few people I can trust in a situation like this. How can I not know what you're thinking? That's right. Xianji nodded. He chuckled and chatted with Xianji for a bit longer. Their conversation revolved around Heavenly God City's recent developments. Xianji gave him a simple report. After confirming that there was nothing to worry about, the God Emperor smiled, walked past her, and arrived before Yi Zichen. Your Majesty, said Yi Zichen. The God Emperor didn't speak directly. Instead, he looked at him for a moment, then nodded and smiled. As expected, heroes come from the young. Things were a bit chaotic back at the Divine Martial Academy, so I didn't get a chance to chat with you. By the time I tried to find you, I heard you'd already left for the outside. At the time, I felt sorry for you, but I was too eager to find you. When I found out you were Xianji's nephew, I told her I'd bring you over when you returned. I never would have guessed that you'd already returned. This junior is afraid, said Yi Zichen, taking a step back. This junior is but an ordinary person. My cultivation has yet to reach the diviner level, yet I've caught the God Emperor's attention. You haven't reached the diviner level yet, but you're still too young. Given your talent, you're no ordinary fish. Becoming a diviner is nothing more than child's play. The God Emperor wasn't stingy with his praise. He laughed heartily. Chapter 1365. An overt plot. God Emperor Zhou Wu laughed heartily. It was hard to imagine that a mighty God Emperor would speak to a minor character who hadn't even reached the diviner level. Anyone could tell that this compliment wasn't sincere. In fact, it made them feel uncomfortable. In the end, he mentioned the outside. Could it be that he feared the outside? Perhaps a little. But that was absolutely no reason for him to flatter Yi Zichen. It was just as Xianji had told Yi Zichen. God Emperor Zhou Wu was arrogant. Even if Yi Zichen had the outside support, he wouldn't lower himself to flatter him like this. I'm afraid Yi Zichen couldn't figure out God Emperor Zhou Wu's intentions. This time, he no longer referred to himself as a junior. Instead, he referred to himself as I'm afraid. This meant that he was constantly retreating. He was using the title to widen the distance between him and God Emperor Zhou Wu. Your nephew is just like you. Zhou Wu glanced coolly at Yi Zichen, then turned to Xianji. Yi Zichen's current behavior was completely proper. He didn't cross the line, but he understood Xianji's personality. Even though she considered herself his aunt, she and Yi Zichen were old friends. She didn't put on the airs of senior at all. She loved to joke around, join in on the fun, and gossip about others. She wasn't proper at all. Yet, now Zhou Wu was saying Yi Zichen was like her. In terms of normal personalities, they were indeed very similar, but right now, Yi Zichen didn't resemble her in the slightest. The only explanation was that when Xianji faced God Emperor Zhou Wu, she behaved the same way. When he thought back to her attitude toward Zhou Wu, she behaved herself. Now that he thought about it, they really did resemble each other. Xianji smiled, but said nothing. Zhou Wu turned around, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked toward the thatched cottage at the foot of the volcano. Let's talk inside. Yi Zichen instinctively glanced at Xianji, hoping to get something out of her. However, when he looked over, he discovered that she wasn't looking at him at all. Instead, she followed the God Emperor. She didn't make any eye contact, nor did she send any divine sense transmissions. Yi Zichen took a deep breath, then followed them. Pu Jingwan and Yi Zichen followed. When Yi Zichen arrived at the thatched hut, Pu Jingwan retracted her divine power. Only now did he confirm that this space had indeed been cut open. There was no scorching heat, nor was there the pungent smell of volcanic smoke. He could vaguely smell the faint fragrance of grass, and he could see a few snow rabbits gnawing on carrots in the fenced courtyard. It was really magical. Yi Zichen exclaimed in his heart. You can also see that the surrounding area is covered in volcanoes. There is no vegetation at all. Cultivating in seclusion here for a long time is very stressful, so I had the Divine Arbiter carve out a space within the Divine Mountain and place it here. That way, when I have free time, I can relax a little. As if sensing Yi Zichen's astonishment, the God Emperor smiled and explained. Yi Zichen nodded, then retracted his gaze. God Emperor Zhou Wu didn't seem to notice him, but Yi Zichen could sense his every move. Inexplicably, Yi Zichen remembered that this was Zhou Wu's domain. He also understood why Xianji had ignored him and followed the God Emperor. Can't I say or do anything? Everyone sit. There's no need to be so nervous. In the outside world, I'm the God Emperor of the God race, but in private, I'm just an ordinary cultivator seeking to transcend. I invited you here, so you're all my honored guests. Zhou Wu chuckled. With a wave of his hand, a stone table appeared in the courtyard, laden with immortal nectar, divine fruits, and rare treasures. Yi Zichen and the others took their seats. The Divine Arbiter stood behind the God Emperor. Miss, you're from the outside, right? If you were a member of the God race, there's no way I wouldn't recognize you. Zhou Wu's gaze landed on Pu Jingwan. That's right. Pu Jingwan nodded. The outside really is a land of fortune. In the face of Pu Jingwan's cold indifference, Zhou Wu maintained his smile and sighed. You could say that, said Pu Jingwan noncommittally. Little friend Yi. As he spoke, Zhou Wu shifted the topic back to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen instantly tensed up when his name was called. He looked toward Zhou Wu and heard him speak. Little friend, you seem to be very wary of me, but you don't have to be nervous. I didn't ask you to come here for anything special. The Outer Realm looked for you before, and I called you here to ask what the Outer Realm told you. So straightforward. Yi Zichen found Zhou Wu's straightforwardness hard to believe. He had thought that Zhou Wu would beat around the bush and ask about it, but Zhou Wu asked him directly. An open scheme? It made sense. At Zhou Wu's level, he could no longer be bothered with scheming. He just wanted to ask openly. Nothing. said Ezichin. That doesn't make sense. Little friend, you are from our third era, but the first era went out of their way to find you. If we didn't say anything, it wouldn't make sense. What's wrong? Don't you want to tell me? Yi Zichen remained silent. Hearing this, Xianji furrowed her brows. God Emperor Zhou Wu raised his brows. Oh, you don't want to tell me? Instantly, Yi Zichen sensed the atmosphere grow heavy. Not good. Yi Zichen had been silent just now because he was trying to figure out how to answer, but his silence had aroused Zhou Wu's suspicions. Fortunately, Zhou Wu quickly chuckled. It seems the outer realm told you something important, but it wasn't convenient for you to tell me. Not really, said Yi Zichen. He'd said something wrong just now, so he tried to salvage the situation. It's mainly because they told me something inexplicable. I didn't think there was any need to tell you, God Emperor. Tell me about it. Zhou Wu chuckled. They went to find me and told me that the first era's master of the stars had died, and that the era was about to be destroyed. Something like that happened. Zhou Wu was stunned. They even asked me who the third era's Emperor Celestial Fate was. I was a bit confused. What exactly is Emperor Celestial Fate? I've never even heard of it, said Yi Zichen. What did you say to them after that? I don't even know what Emperor Celestial Fate is for. Of course, I said I don't know. That's it. Yi Zichen put on a thoughtful expression. They also said that if our era wanted to avoid the calamity of the end of our era, someone had to truly transcend. They even said how to transcend. Yi Zichen paused on purpose. God Emperor Zhou Wu's emotions were completely on edge, and he waited intently for Yi Zichen to continue. Right? I remember now. After a brief silence, Yi Zichen patted his head in understanding. They said that only those with Emperor Celestial Fate can transcend. No one else has the fate to transcend. Zhou Wu, Xianji, the Divine Arbiter, and even Pu Jingwan's pupils constricted. Yi Zichen sneered inwardly. An open scheme. Chapter 1366. So what if I tell you everything? The God Emperor didn't hide anything and asked about the outside. This was an overt plot. Yi Zichen didn't hide anything either. He told him everything about the outside and how he'd transcended. This was also an overt plot. However, when he answered, he'd left out a few important bits of information. However, he was the only one who knew this. God Emperor Zhou Wu did not know. Truth and lies. When 30% of the lie was paired with 70% of the truth, it would be the truth if it was told to others. As expected, when God Emperor Zhou Wu heard this news, his expression changed slightly. Pu Jingwan and Xianji frowned at Yi Zichen. How would he tell them all this? The God Emperor lived up to his reputation. In the face of such shocking news, he quickly calmed down. He smiled out of habit, but when he spoke again, he found it difficult to maintain his natural composure. The outside actually told you all this. What? Is this really that amazing news? Yi Zichen feigned a look of confusion, then sighed regretfully. Perhaps they're just trying any doctor they can find in a desperate situation. When they told me that the outside was about to be breached, their expressions were quite unsightly, as if a great catastrophe was about to befall them. Is that so? Zhou Wu laughed. But why did they choose you, little friend Yi? What do you mean? Whoosh. Yi Zichen instantly shot to his feet, his eyes trembling. Your Majesty, you don't think I'm lying to you, do you? I absolutely wouldn't dare. They came to find me because of my friend. In fact, I went to the Outer Realms because my friend wanted to take me there to play for a few days. When the people there heard that I was from the Third Era, they found me and told me a bunch of nonsense. I didn't understand any of it, so all I could do was nod and agree. After that, I didn't take it to heart. I stayed with my friends for a few days, then returned. From start to finish, Zhou Wu looked at Yi Zichen with an indifferent, judgmental gaze. Even though Yi Zichen's voice trembled so much that he sounded like he was about to cry, he didn't tell him to stop. He simply waited for him to finish. Little friend Yi, I'm curious to know that you have friends from the outside. That brother of mine used to be from our Third Era as well. He's from one of our subordinate planes. He ascended 100 years before I did. As for how he got to the outside, I don't know either, said Yi Zichen without the slightest hesitation. The atmosphere was especially tense. Although there was no anger on the divine emperor's face, his questioning tone was enough to make the people in the courtyard feel extremely pressured. Yi Zichen lowered his head and panted heavily. At that moment, Zhou Wu smiled. "Raise your head." Yi Zichen looked up without any hesitation. The fear on his face was not fake, and his fingers and legs were trembling slightly. It could be said that the current Yi Zichen was the epitome of someone on the brink of terror. After sizing him up a few times, a bright smile appeared on the divine emperor's face. "This emperor is overthinking things. Little friend, please don't take offense." As he spoke, a set of silver-white battle armor appeared in Zhou Wu's hand. "This is something I obtained by chance in the outer realm. I'm giving it to you as an apology. Your Majesty, please don't blame me. How could I dare accept such a precious reward?" said Yi Zichen. Zhou Wu said nothing. He simply placed the armor on the table. Xianji hurriedly put it away, then glared at Yi Zichen. "His Majesty, the God Emperor, gave it to you. Just accept it. Hurry up and thank him." "Thank you, God Emperor." Yi Zichen bowed deeply. "No need for formalities. Sit." Only then did Zhou Wu smile. He watched as Xianji dragged Yi Zichen to a seat, then said, "Little friend Yi, I'm a bit curious. You just said that the Emperor Star's celestial fate can transcend. Can you explain it to me in detail?" "I don't remember the whole thing, because I don't know what they were talking about, and I didn't listen too closely. Basically, they said that the Emperor Star's celestial fate is the key to transcending. So long as you possess it, you can transcend. But transcendence isn't like ordinary cultivation, where you advance step by step. Transcendence is about leaping out of the restrictions of the laws." Yi Zichen was afraid that he hadn't explained everything in detail, so he used divine mechanics to explain the diagram Han Nan had drawn for him to Zhou Wu once more. Leaping out, leaping out. After listening to Yi Zichen's explanation, Zhou Wu fell into deep thought. Occasionally, he frowned in thought, then glanced at the diagram Yi Zichen had drawn. He repeated Yi Zichen's words over and over again. "Are there realms above transcendence?" asked Zhou Wu suddenly. "They didn't say that, so I don't think so," said Yi Zichen. "Then why did the first Era's Master of the Stars die?" "That, they didn't say anything. I asked." The God Emperor fell silent once more. His majestic gaze was like a sharp blade as he stared intently at the diagram Yi Zichen had just drawn. He had many thoughts running through his head. Yi Zichen's explanation of leaping out of the laws was something he'd never considered before, nor had he considered it in that direction. Now that he'd drawn the diagram, he'd vaguely touched upon a path he'd never touched before, but he was still missing the final step. "Thank you, little friend Yi, for dispelling my doubts. I, Zhou Wu, am deeply grateful." Zhou Wu rose to his feet, then bowed deeply to Yi Zichen. Both Xianji and Yi Zichen hurriedly rose to their feet. "How could I possibly dare accept such a bow from you?" "Your Majesty," said Yi Zichen, terrified. "You're exaggerating, Your Majesty. My nephew is a member of the God race, and you're our supreme leader. You're our hope for transcendence. It's his good fortune to be able to help you." "There's no need for you to do this," said Xianji fearfully. "No, I still have to thank him. Even if I'm a God Emperor, I have to do the same." God Emperor Zhou Wu pursed his lips into a smile, and 2 bottles of elixirs appeared in his hands. "Here are 2 bottles of pills of fortune. It seems you gave away one earlier, so I'll make it up for you." "You already know," said Xianji with a bitter smile. "I can understand your desire to protect your nephew. Besides, you did the right thing. If Wang Chun had really injured little friend Yi, I wouldn't have been able to learn so much about the outside and transcendence. You don't need to worry about the Wang family. In a moment, I'll send the divine arbiter over to calm them down, and we'll let this matter rest. Your Majesty is magnanimous. Let's leave it at that. You and little friend, you can go back now. After what he said, I've gained some enlightenment. I need to go into seclusion as soon as possible. I'll leave the divine mountain's affairs to you. Don't worry." Xianji nodded. With that, Xianji took her leave with Yi Zichen. At that moment, Zhou Wu suddenly spoke. Chapter 1367. Through as soon as Zhou Wu said he wanted to become sworn brothers, The surrounding air seemed to grow still. Yi Zichen put down his foot. His eyes widened in shock as he tried to recall what he'd just said. Become sworn brothers? Zhou Wu and him. Just what kind of brain circuitry was required to say something like that? Xianji turned around, her eyes brimming with disbelief. Even she couldn't understand why Zhou Wu would think something like that in a situation like this. God Emperor Zhou Wu said with a smile, while the crowd was still confused. I was just joking with you. You're dismissed. I'll take my leave. She bowed to Zhou Wu, then wrapped Yi Zichen up with her divine power and left. After watching them leave the courtyard, Zhou Wu said with a smile on his face, How was it? Did you see anything? The divine arbiter pursed her lips. Earlier, I tested him. When he mentioned you, his emotions clearly fluctuated wildly. I can't confirm whether or not he's really the heir of the 5 elements. Because he hit it very well, I only caught a glimpse of it for an instant. After that, I didn't sense anything out of the ordinary. This fellow is indeed someone who knows how to cover up. The God Emperor gave his affirmation and said, Is there anything else? Xianji's behavior is a bit strange. What do you mean? She deliberately mentioned my descendant a few times. Although she said it in a casual tone, I could tell she was doing it on purpose. It was as if she was saying it for someone to hear, said the divine arbiter after a moment's thought. In your opinion, who do you think she was saying it for? Asked the God Emperor. I think she was saying it for him to hear, said the divine arbiter. From start to finish, the woman by his side didn't react in the slightest. When he heard the divine arbiter's analysis, Zhou Wu's smile grew wider and wider. He tapped his fingers on the table, narrowed his eyes, and looked ahead. Before long, he arched his brows. They left so quickly? It seems they don't like staying in my domain. Your Excellency, the way I see it, Xianji might not really. Before the divine arbiter could finish, Zhou Wu cut her off. Don't spout nonsense. The divine arbiter hurriedly shut her mouth and stopped slandering him. Zhou Wu continued smiling as he looked at the snow hare that was hopping around in the yard. How credible do you think what he said just now is? You mean everything he said, God Emperor Zhou Wu said. Just now, Yi Zichen's disguise was on point. Not even the God Emperor could see through it. From his facial expression to the glint in his eyes, to his breathing and heartbeat, there wasn't a single flaw. However, the God Emperor knew full well that Yi Zichen was putting on an act. Zhou Wu understood why that was the case, but he didn't want to talk about it. What he cared about was what Yi Zichen had just said. The outer realm was about to be destroyed. The Star Lord had fallen. If anyone else were to hear this news, they would definitely think that it was fake. However, when Yi Zichen said it, the God Emperor had a vague feeling that everything he said was true. If he really wanted to tell a lie, there was no need for him to say such a lie. Therefore, the God Emperor somewhat believed what he said. There was also the picture on the table. Transcendence wasn't about cultivating step by step. It was about escaping the shackles of the laws. This sort of explanation was truly novel to the God Emperor. It wasn't exactly enlightening, but it did make him feel enlightened. It was possible that the God Emperor's greatest gain from this meeting was this painting. In my opinion, said the divine arbiter after a moment's hesitation. The divine arbiter hesitated for a moment, then said, I believe his words are 70% believable. The death of the Master of the Stars and the destruction of the Outlands are all believable. The only thing worth considering is his method of transcendence. You're pretty much on my wavelength, said the God Emperor with a calm smile. The divine arbiter pursed her lips. Transcendence was a realm that only rulers could vaguely sense. It was a realm that every expert of any era dreamed of reaching. Everything Yi Zichen said made perfect sense. His friend might have gone to the outside due to some sort of fortuitous encounter. He and his friend might have gone to the outside for a few days. None of that was a problem. The problem was, why would someone from the outside tell a minor figure like him, who hadn't even reached the diviner level? From his tone, it was obvious that he was pretending to faint. He'd said several times that he didn't understand anything and hadn't paid much attention to what the outsiders had to say. But even under these circumstances, when you asked him, he explained everything he could. Although it wasn't all that detailed, you could see the gist of it. Besides, he hadn't reached the diviner level. and he didn't have the Emperor's star's celestial fate. So why would the outsiders tell him the method of transcendence? Could it be that he was an auxiliary star or fated star, and they wanted him to return, find the Emperor's star, and tell him? Everyone knew that the auxiliary stars and fated stars were loyal only to the Emperor's star. You could say they were loyal, but you could also say they were foolishly loyal. They absolutely wouldn't share information that could help the Emperor's star with outsiders. Unless the Emperor's star agreed or told them himself, they wouldn't. During their conversation just now, Yi Zichen had kept his mouth shut in response to Zhou Wu's questions. Zhou Wu might have suspected he was an auxiliary star or fated star, but he'd feigned fear and told them everything. Zhou Wu couldn't help but suspect him. The only possibility was that Yi Zichen was the Emperor's star. That would explain everything. Whether it was the outsiders telling him about the method of transcendence, or the ownership of the Xinyuan sword and 5 Elements Great Emperor's Yao Ceiling Pagoda, he could explain everything perfectly. Really, God Emperor Zhou Wu pursed his lips as if he sighed, but his gaze remained fixed on the diagram on the table. Your Majesty, I think we can give it a try. Regardless of whether he's telling the truth or not, you have the Emperor's star's celestial fate, and his method of transcendence is truly novel. You might really be able to transcend, said the Divine Arbiter. That's exactly what I was thinking. God Emperor Zhou Wu nodded non-committally as he stared at the erupting volcano in the distance. Back when the 5 Elements Tao destroyed the 5 Elements, the God Emperor had spent tens of thousands of years trying to form a Tao heart for his 4 subordinates: wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. Only the Tao of fire remained intact. Even after countless years, he still couldn't take that final step. Previously, he believed that transcendence required mastery of all Taos. Otherwise, the 5 Elements Great Emperor wouldn't have needed to destroy the 5 Elements. That's what Zhou Wu had always believed, and he'd worked hard towards mastery. However, he'd been trapped here for far too long. His Tao heart for the Tao of fire hadn't solidified, and he'd once been disheartened. But now that Yi Zichen had mentioned a method of transcendence, it was as if he'd opened up a new path for him. It should be very difficult for me to master the Tao of fire, but the method of transcendence he spoke of is indeed an opportunity for me. I have to give it a try. Chapter 1368. No chance in front of the thatched hut. The God Emperor and the Divine Arbiter gave some orders. When the God Emperor returned, the Divine Arbiter bowed and said, "Leave everything to me." Then, she transformed into a clone and sat cross-legged in front of the door. It was impossible to tell if it was her true body or her clone, but she quietly melted into the void. Yi Zichen and the others, who'd left earlier, landed in a thicket. Barrier. Xianji's lips parted, and a sound wave rippled through the void. As the sound waves shook the void, it also enveloped the area within 100 meters around them. This sound barrier seemed invisible, but if one touched it with their hands, one could clearly feel the surrounding space rippling. Do you know what you just said? That was the first thing she'd said since leaving the thatched hut. Her gaze was solemn, and her eyes brimmed with reproach and deep confusion. Even as she sat at the stone table, she'd been terrified. Even with her temperament, she almost couldn't help but interrupt him. Yi Zichen, who'd been in the middle of touching the barrier, retracted his hand. When he saw her solemn expression, he smiled. If the God Emperor wants to know, I'll tell him. It's that simple. Is there something wrong with your brain? Xianji glared at him and rapped him on the head. He asked you, so you had to tell him. What did I tell you before we left? I told you to keep your composure when facing Zhou Wu. But what were you doing just now? You were such a coward from start to finish. You're an embarrassment to your mother. Yi Zichen turned his head away, refusing to look at her. Xianji was truly furious. She naturally knew how oppressive Zhou Wu's aura was. Zhou Wu's expression changed. Even she felt her heart skip a beat. But look at Yi Zichen's behavior just now. He'd been cowering like a coward. From start to finish, he'd answered everything she asked. Based on her impression of him, he wasn't like that at all. Yi Zichen hadn't expected her to be so angry. He didn't dare disturb her. After a long time, Xianji turned back. Was what you told Zhou Wu true? Of course it was true. I didn't lie at all. If you don't believe me, ask Jingwan. She was there when Han Nan told me all this. Is the transcendence you speak of also true? Asked Xianji. Of course, Yi Zichen nodded. You. This honest reply angered Xianji so much that her fingers trembled uncontrollably. She couldn't say anything for a long time. She stared straight at Yi Zichen for a long time, then walked to his side, held his head with both hands, and looked at him a few times. Are you scared out of your wits? Is your brain filled with paste? How dare you say that? Zhou Wu is our god emperor and the hope of our god race. He wants to know why I didn't tell him. Auntie, aren't you also a subordinate of the god emperor? Why did you have to react like this when I told the god emperor? Don't tell me, you and Xiao family. Scram! She pushed Yi Zichen's head to the side and glared at him. I'm not as spineless as Xiao Ting. They want to usurp the throne. No matter how down and out I am, I'd never do something like that. Xianji's tone was heavy and serious. Yi Zichen had never doubted that she'd work with the demons. He'd only said that as a joke. He hadn't expected her reaction to be so intense. As he considered whether or not he should explain himself, she continued. In truth, Zhou Wu and I aren't as close as outsiders think we are. I'm a fox, an ordinary fox. Everyone in the 3 realms knows this. The only reason I can work for the god race is because he helped me once in the past. I wanted to repay him, so he let me stay here for 1,000 years. Now that 1,000 years have long since passed, we don't owe each other anything. I'm still here simply because I don't want to part with my followers. A cool breeze blew through the forest, accompanied by the fragrance of fresh grass. Xianji sighed, then looked at Yi Zichen in disappointment. You really shouldn't have said that. If Zhou Wu really transcends, do you think you'll still be alive? Why not? Yi Zichen didn't understand. When he saw Xianji's eyes, he couldn't help but arch his brows. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda? That's right. Why didn't Zhou Wu ask about the Yao Ceiling Pagoda when I arrived? He didn't need to ask. The Divine Arbiter already probed it for him. Xianji smiled calmly. Why do you think Zhou Wu didn't show up right away? Instead, he asked us to see the Divine Arbiter first. On the surface, the Divine Arbiter is Zhou Wu's trusted aide, but in truth, she's his woman. She's absolutely loyal to Zhou Wu. That's why he sent her to ask him. Some things have the same effect if the Divine Arbiter asks him, and it's more convenient for her to ask him. I see. Yi Zichen nodded. She already learned everything she wanted to know from the Divine Arbiter's probing. In other words, they already know you inherited the will of the 5 elements. Do you think you'll be able to survive if he surpasses you? When that happens, never mind me. Even if your mother brought the entire Saint Palace with her, it'd all be for naught, said Xianji. But there's no way for him to transcend. When he heard Xianji's dejected and regretful words, Yi Zichen shrugged helplessly and smiled bitterly. Xianji was stunned. Her eyes brightened, but she was also a bit suspicious. Don't tell me you don't know he has the Emperor's stars, celestial fate? If he can transcend with it, why can't he? Did you miss the important point? Am I right? Yi Zichen pressed his lips into a smile, then looked at Xianji and hurriedly repeated the conditions Han Nan had told him about for transcendence. Xianji nodded as she listened. By the end, her eyes were as wide as saucers. In short, he wants to transcend, but he's not fated to do so, snorted Yi Zichen. His expression was just like Han Nan's. He wasn't stupid. He knew Zhou Wu would be his future enemy, yet he'd still told him the method to transcend. Wasn't he out of his mind? Indeed, everything he'd said to Zhou Wu was true. Whether it was the death of the Master of the Stars, the imminent destruction of the outside, or even the method to transcend, there was nothing false about what he'd said. But he'd left out the most important point. If he wanted to transcend, he had the Emperor's Star's celestial fate, but he also had to be chosen by the Emperor's Star. Neither of these points could be omitted, and Zhou Wu had merely fulfilled one of them. Zhou Wu might be able to break through by following Yi Zichen's instructions, but he'd stolen celestial fate. Without an Emperor's Star body, he'd never be able to truly transcend. Transcendence was clearly right in front of him, yet he'd taken it. To him. Chapter 1369. The terrifying power of the god Emperor Kill and destroy the heart. For his own selfish desires, the God Emperor had usurped the five elements' great emperor's celestial fate, which was why he had become the leader of the God race. Since Yi Zichen had inherited the five elements' great emperor's will, it would be far too boring to simply kill the God Emperor and take back his celestial fate. He wanted Zhou Wu to see hope, but that hope was forever just a step away from him. And in the end, make him despair. This kind of big ups and downs might be more interesting. Xianji stared at Yi Zichen in a daze. His killing blow was simply too vicious. She didn't know why, but she found it doubly exciting. However, in the midst of her excitement, her expression changed. She walked up to Yi Zichen aggressively and knocked him on the head. Yi Zichen, who'd been lost in thought for a moment, was struck dumb. He rubbed his head and stared blankly at her. This blow wasn't light. He felt a bump on his head from Xianji's blow. What? Is it fun to play with your concubine? Xianji crossed her arms and furrowed her brows. Since you already had a plan, why didn't you tell me directly? You caused me to be unreasonable for half a day. When you saw that I was also kept in the dark, you must have felt pretty good, right? Not to mention, just now, when Yi Zichen saw Xianji's expression, he was secretly pleased. Who was Xianji? Lady Providence. Who could pry into the workings of the heavens? There was probably nothing in the entire three realms that she couldn't divine. No matter what she encountered, she seemed to know everything clearly. However, she was completely kept in the dark just now. Yi Zichen naturally felt great about that. However, after taking her punch, Yi Zichen didn't feel good at all. There was only pain. He rubbed his head resentfully, not daring to talk back to Xianji. Pu Jingwan was by his side, and Pu Jingwan was on good terms with Xianji. If Xianji got angry and decided to beat him up, given Pu Jingwan's personality, she would definitely watch from the sidelines. It would not be worth it to be beaten up for nothing. I'm confiscating the armor Zhou Wu gave you. Take it as compensation for tricking me, said Xianji, glaring at him. I don't. Yi Zichen panicked. As a God Emperor, Zhou Wu's weapon would at least be a divine weapon. Although he now had a divine artifact battle armor, who would complain about having more divine artifacts? Even if he couldn't wear it himself, he could give it to his brothers to ensure their safety. Otherwise, he could sell it at an auction. It would definitely fetch a good price. Why was he giving it to Xianji for no reason? You want to be beaten? Xianji clenched her fists. Yi Zichen immediately scratched his head and gave up. Wasn't it just a divine artifact battle armor? When the time came, the outer realms would send 100 sets over. When she saw that Yi Zichen didn't dare resist, she smiled in satisfaction. The materials used for that set of divine armor were pretty good. When the time came, it would definitely sell for a good price. It was also a good choice to keep it as a collection. After obtaining a set of divine armor, she remembered that the God Emperor had given her several bottles of pills of fortune. Once Yi Zichen's resources from the outside arrived, he'd have to give her a few more bottles as well. Over time, he had earned quite a lot. Xianji was in a great mood. She swung her arms a few times, then squinted her eyes at Yi Zichen. By the way, do you still remember what I said before? What are you referring to? Yi Zichen complained. The things I told the Divine Arbiter, said Xianji. Her juniors? As expected, you really did say that just for me to hear. At the time, Yi Zichen didn't think there was any need for her to go into so much detail. Now that he heard it, it really was the case. I didn't say it for you to hear. Do you think I'm bored? My relationship with her is as bad as hell. Praising her juniors, haha. Xianji shrugged and snorted. Let me tell you, the Divine Arbiter is absolutely loyal to Zhou Wu, and so are her clansmen. But you don't need to worry too much. Although she has a whole bunch of divine generals among her juniors, you don't need to worry too much about them. The only one you need to worry about is Jing Hua, whom I mentioned earlier. Yi Zichen had an impression of his nephew, the one who could fight Shui Yang head-on. That guy can be considered a monster. He's only been alive for 300 years, yet he's already an emperor. Not even the emperors of the 8 divine mountains' holy lands can necessarily suppress him. If he's that much of a monster, then you. Xianji chuckled. The arrogance in her eyes said what she wanted to say. You need to pay attention to this monster. Also, I have to tell you that the Divine Arbiter's clan has quite a few old-timers. They're all at the same cultivation level as the Divine Arbiter, and they have no fewer than 100 divine generals. Furthermore, they're all absolutely loyal to the God Emperor. They have no fewer than 5 clans on par with the Divine Arbiter's clan. Yi Zichen fell silent. It was as if he'd been struck by a halo of silence. His eyes glazed over as he listened to Xianji reveal the God Emperor's secrets. No fewer than 5. All of them were on the same level as the Divine Arbiter's clan. In other words, Zhou Wu had at least 6 Divine Mountains Holy Lands backing him. Was this really? He'd never heard of such a thing. The God Emperor personally raised these clans after ascending to the throne. As for how he raised them, I tried divining it, but I couldn't figure it out. That's all I could figure out, said Xianji. Yi Zichen scratched his head. Only now did he understand what Han Nin had said. Enough? He absolutely knew about the God Emperor's hidden faction, which was why he'd been surprised Yi Zichen only wanted so few people. At the time, Yi Zichen had assumed that 20 rulers would be enough to flatten the God race. But now, enough my ass. Even if he had 10 times as many, he wouldn't dare say it was enough. No, when the outsiders sent people over to hand over resources, he had to negotiate with them first. They'd send him more elite troops. Otherwise, a colossus like the God Emperor would be too difficult to deal with. The Yao Emperor and Demon Emperor could stand toe-to-toe with the God Emperor. Was this all they had? Absolutely not. They definitely secretly raised elite troops as well. Based on the God Emperor's standards, Yi Zichen feared he'd need at least 1,000 rulers to gain an advantage in numbers. Andy, do you know what the God Emperor's clans are surnamed? I'll have to pay more attention when the time comes. I don't know. All I know is that the Divine Arbiter's surname is Shun. I don't know anything else. Xianji shook her head. Shun, what an arrogant surname. Although Xianji didn't know the surnames of the other hidden clans, which made him somewhat vexed, perhaps knowing the Divine Arbiter's clan was a good thing. In the future, if he ran into anyone with the surname Shun, he'd have to pay close attention. Especially that freak, Jinghua. Chapter 1370. Grow suspicious by the time Yi Zichen and the others returned to Heavenly God City. The sky was already filled with stars. The dazzling starlight was dazzling, and every home was brightly lit. Fire-red lanterns hung from the shops along the streets. Even standing outside the city, they could hear the bustle of the taverns inside. But even in this peaceful, tranquil night, Heavenly God City's defenses were at their highest. There were at least 10 guards standing guard around the tower in front of the city gate. Below the city gate, there were also 6 small teams of 10 patrolling the vicinity of the city. The squad's overall strength had gone from being a Sky Supreme to a Diviner. At first, the squad consisted entirely of Earth Supremes, but now there were at least 4 Sky Supremes. It's already this bad? Yi Zichen scanned the sky outside the city gates with his divine sense. When he sensed the city's defenses, he couldn't help but click his tongue. Back when he'd followed Skyspan Academy's team here, the defenses hadn't reached this level yet. These are extraordinary times. It's good to be cautious, said Xianji calmly. She'd been the one to set up Heavenly God City's defenses. Since the God Emperor wasn't in the capital, he'd left full authority over the city to her. Having been entrusted with such a heavy responsibility, she naturally couldn't disappoint Zhou Wu. Although she'd already repaid all her debts to him, she'd lived with the God Realm for 10,000 years. She couldn't just leave things as they were. Such a large-scale operation would consume more and more of the city's resources by the day. However, the relationship between the God, Yao, and demon races was ambiguous, and they couldn't afford to let down their guard. In order to ensure the city's safety, she naturally had to strengthen its defenses. It wasn't just Heavenly God City. Every other city on the central Divine Mountain was on red alert. There was nothing wrong with taking preventive measures. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy footsteps came from afar, followed by the clanging of weapons and armor. Yi Zichen looked down and saw that it was a squad of soldiers patrolling the city's outskirts. Heavenly God City prohibits flying. Friends, come down quickly. That way, it'll be easier for you and easier for us. For some reason, Yi Zichen found this voice somewhat familiar. As Xianji descended from the sky, the moment the soldiers saw her, they knelt to the ground. "Your Highness." At that moment, Yi Zichen saw the face of the guard captain clearly. No wonder he looked so familiar. This was the captain of the guards who had stopped him and Pu Jingwan. When he looked at the members behind him, they were no longer the ones he had met before. It couldn't have been them. Although Pu Jingwan hadn't used her full strength, she was still a top-notch expert amongst the rulers. Those guards were only Sky Supremes. They'd be bedridden for at least half a month after taking a single blow from her. "It's you." It was clear that Xianji also had an impression of this guard captain. "The pills of fortune have already been sent out. They didn't embezzle them, did they?" The other members all looked envious. They all knew that Xianji had given away a bottle of good fortune pills today. This kind of pill was something that could only be encountered by chance. Many people from a city defense department were annoyed at their bad luck. If only they had encountered such a good thing. Even if he was beaten up, he might be able to obtain the good fortune pill. As long as he wasn't beaten to death, everything was fine. How would this subordinate dare? The captain of the guards smiled bitterly. "After sending those brothers back, I distributed all the elixirs. How are things with the Wang family?" asked Xianji. She didn't care too much about the ordinary guards. She cared more about the Wang family's attitude. Although the Wang family wasn't a peak-level family clan in Heavenly God City, they were still an aristocratic family with some influence. Lady Providence bestowed 2 good fortune pills. The Wang family is naturally moved to tears. Furthermore, this subordinate heard that the Divine Arbiter went to the Wang family recently to appease them. I doubt the Wang family will. Suddenly, the guard captain recalled what Xianji had told him earlier. He absolutely couldn't let the God Emperor find out about this. Instantly, his face turned incomparably pale, and his back was drenched in cold sweat. "Lady Providence, No need to say more." Xianji cut him off. The guard captain's expression grew even more unsightly. Even though he was already a diviner, his hands, which held his helmet, began to tremble. His hair was completely soaked in sweat, and beads of sweat dripped down his nose and onto the ground. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was sweating like crazy. "All right, I don't mean to blame you." Xianji glanced at him coolly. "I know the God Emperor knows about this. We just returned from his place." Xianji believed that after accepting her pills, the guard captain would do everything in his power to keep the news under wraps. Although he was only a small captain, he still had some power. If he wanted to keep the news under wraps, there was an 80% chance he could do it. But the God Emperor still knew about this. It was highly likely that he had planted spies in the city. He'd clearly given management of the Divine Mountains to Xianji, but now he'd planted spies in the city. From this, it was clear that Zhou didn't trust Xianji as much as he said he did. What concerned her even more was the Divine Arbiter. She just said she'd send her, but she hadn't expected them to come so soon. Zhou, it seemed he was beginning to suspect her too. She waved a hand irritably at the guard captain and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Continue to stand guard." As she spoke, she turned to walk into the city. Unexpectedly, the captain of the guard stopped her. Under her suspicious gaze, the guard captain stretched out his hand and said meticulously, "Lady Providence, please show me your identity card." On the way into the city, Xianji's expression was unsightly. She was the mighty head of the profound pavilion, yet someone had stopped her and forced her to show her identity card. When she thought about it that way, what happened to him and Pu Jingwan made sense. That adorable guard captain wasn't trying to make trouble for them. He really was meticulous and meticulous. Is there a need for that? Is there a problem with that? Yi Zichen tried to console her. Just now, he checked your identity card. I don't think you should blame him. Instead, you should reward him. These are extraordinary times, and you need to be on your guard. Xianji glanced at him coolly, a strange smile flashing across her face. She approached him. Yi Zichen was just about to say something when he saw a hand move so fast, he couldn't even see it. It smacked him on the head. "I don't need you to tell me that. If you can think of it, how could I, your aunt, not think of it?" My expression turned ugly because of a few of his team members. When he had asked me to show my crystal card, a few of his team members had clearly shown terrified expressions. It's obvious that if it were them, they would have let me in right away. What if a Yao or demon disguised themselves as me and snuck into the city?